Yeah, well, I don't know, because eventually you're gonna amend the language, but it might be the language for everything instead of just one thing.
Just like
That's
Bud
what
Light
I'm saying.
Go talk to them.
or Mickey Mouse.
I really was gonna bring popcorn for like force today.
I would have needed it.
I know, I like had my bucket already. I was gonna go to the movie theater. I was gonna get movie theater popcorn. I was gonna bring it, and
No Municipal.
canceled.
Cancel for next month too.
I know.
Like 10 days ago.
I did not get that memo. When I went through my emails,
Well,
like,
it was from Chief Jensen.
yeah, I went through. It wasn't
Let me see it.
because Amy told me this morning. I was like all excited about it. She's like, "Oh, that was canceled a couple weeks ago." I was like, "What?" I saw the one in May was canceled, but not the one in April.
Oh, I needed it.
It's all right. I'll save it for next time.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the, what's today? April 18th. I should know that it's my son's birthday.
It's tax day.
It's tax day.
Tax day. No, that was yesterday.
No, it's
No, it's
today.
today.
Logan City Council meeting. Welcome to all of you. Our chairman, Ernesto Lopez, was not able to be with us tonight, so you are stuck with me as the vice chair. This evening, for our opening ceremony, we have Alice Shepard, who is here as the program coordinator for Bridgerland Literacy. Alice, the time is yours.
My name is Alice Shepard, and I'm from Bridgerland Literacy. Bridgerland Literacy started over 30 years ago in a garage in Lewiston with a Vista volunteers. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional all of a sudden.
To the
Does this tilt?
microphone.
Okay.
There we go.
That better? Anyway, we kind of went into hiatus because of the pandemic, because you can't teach someone to read if you can't sit right next to them. But we teach adults and youth 10 and up to improve their literacy, their reading, their writing, and their math skills. You know, illiteracy is kind of a silent saboteur. It affects communities, it affects families, it affects children, it affects adults. It affects their employment. If they can't take the test to make that next grade for promotion, then they can't be promoted, they can't move up. It affects employers when employees fail to come to work or struggle to read the schedule and to get there. It affects healthcare because you can't read your prescriptions correctly, so either you overdose or underdose, or you can't follow surgical instructions after a surgery. So it really affects a lot of our lives. 85% of the youth that are incarcerated have low literacy. And 75% of the children whose parents don't read well, they don't read well either. So it's generational, and it keeps going and going and going, which is really scary. I have 4 children, so that means 3 of my kids would struggle with life and reading and success. Bridgerland Literacy is back up and running. We have worked with every library director across the valley. Our tutors will now work safely in those libraries with students. So we're looking for volunteers, we're looking for students. We're up and running, and we're trying to curb this silent saboteur that destroys lives. Because of literacy and other issues, it can lead to domestic violence, it can lead to foster care, and all of those are a drain on our community and a drain on our families, and we need to change that. Thanks for letting me be here tonight and at least voice who we are and that we still are here after all this time.
How do we find you?
I am up at Utah State now. It's alice.shepard@usu.edu. And we also have a website, it's beliterate.org. And you can find me, and we'll find a way to help you work with us.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Alice. You guys have done amazing work through the years, and I'm glad to hear that things are back on track for you to continue to help the community.
Just one comment. The last few meetings we've had in this room, we've been having trouble with the microphones, the sound system. If you feel like the mics aren't on or you can't hear, maybe just do this to me and I'll try and get our tech folks to make some adjustments.
Well, at least the green light's on tonight.
But it was red just a minute ago, so it kind of, I
Okay.
noticed it was going on and off, so that's why I'm wondering if it's working properly tonight, so.
But also those that present, if you could get the microphone closer to your mouth.
Although with that microphone, it shouldn't matter.
Okay.
Is it who's in the back tonight? Is it Jeremy, Jeff? Jeremy, if you can, I don't know if you can turn up the volume, Jeremy, on the microphone?
I'm working on it.
Great, thank you. Perfect.
Hiding in the background.
He can hear you.
Yeah, just know that Jeremy can hear each and every one of you out
We
there.
have
so,
hidden
yeah.
people
So-
everywhere.
We do want you to be able to hear, us too.
That's right. So our next agenda item is the acceptance of our minutes and the approval of our agenda. Before I move for a motion of that, I just want to make it clear, I found out earlier today that there was a presumption that something was on our agenda for tonight that is not. So it's always important, if you haven't picked up an agenda at the back of the room, I would encourage you to do so so that you can see what is on our agenda. And we also do have one request from Mayor Daines to add under the mayor's staff reports an update from,
It's actually gonna be Craig Humphreys.
from Craig Humphreys on flood preparation here within the city. So that will be item B under the mayor and staff reports.
With those modifications, I'd move acceptance of the agenda and schedules.
And minutes?
And the minutes.
And minutes, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay.
I knew there was something else.
I'll second it.
Any comment? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Just a reminder that the regular meeting schedule for Logan City Council is the first and third Tuesday of every month at 5:30. Our next meeting will be on May 2nd, here in the chambers. We now move to the time on our agenda where we welcome questions and comments for the mayor and the council for items otherwise not on the agenda. I would like to point out that if there is a item of a group, we do ask that you appoint a spokesman to speak on your behalf, and comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. And Craig, do you want to kind of maybe address what that might be regarding?
Yeah, there may be some in attendance that want to address the event that's taking place at the Elements Restaurant later this month. Certainly welcome to address the council, express concerns, thoughts, support, whatever they'd like to address. But I need to mention a couple things from the outset. First, this event is taking place on private property. There's no law in the books that would prevent this event from happening. The city council doesn't have authority to stop this event and is not going to be addressing this event tonight, period. If a crime was committed here at the event or anywhere, the police can be called and address it and look into charges. Second, the First Amendment is there to protect against censorship. Expressive conduct can be deemed protected speech under the First Amendment. The general rule is that under the First Amendment, a private property owner has the right to determine the kind, extent, and the terms of speech on their property. If the city attempted to shut this event or any event down because of the content of the speech, it would be violating the First Amendment. So the First Amendment protects speech that's popular and it protects speech that is not popular. So again, certainly welcome to address, but the council's not going to be making any decisions or discussing the event of the Elements.
Thanks, Craig. I hope that clarifies things for individuals who might be here in the audience. So I will open up the floor then for any questions or comments for the mayor and council tonight. Okay. No comments?
That was easy.
That was really easy. All right.
Nobody's gonna say anything.
Thank you, everybody, for being here and showing support for those people that are important to you in your lives. I appreciate that. All right, we will now move on to the mayor and staff reports. Mayor Daines?
All right, the first item tonight is we have the Cache County Fire Chief Rod Hammer here with us. We appreciate his attendance. He has an award to present to the Logan City Fire Department. Please come forward, Chief.
Madam Chairman, Mayor Daines, thank you for allowing me to spend a few minutes here to recognize your fire department. Actually, I'd like to invite those fire department members that are here, if they'd like to come up as well. As you know, there's a pretty robust mutual aid and automatic aid system in the county for fire protection. We regularly ask other departments to respond outside of their area. We regularly respond inside of Logan with several other departments. And in this instance, in Cache Junction, when we had that explosion and fatality, we requested the expertise of the Logan Fire Department and their technical rescue team to respond and help with that rescue and recovery effort. So these members, some of who are behind me, actually responded, as well as the membership from the staff that helped put that together. And I apologize if I get a little emotional about this. It's still a little bit raw. What we would like to do is present a letter of commendation to the Logan Fire Department, and it reads, on March 9th, 2023, multiple units from the Logan Fire Department responded to a house explosion in Cache Junction. These firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and the administrative staff, both on scene and at the station, performed with courage, dedication, and professionalism. Through their actions and the actions of others, victims were rescued and recovered, the fire was controlled, and all fire personnel were able to safely return home. This reflects the highest tradition of the fire service. The Cache County Fire District is proud to present this letter of commendation to the members of the Logan Fire Department, and we express our appreciation for the dedicated men and women who so valiantly serve their community. And it's signed David Zook and myself. So if you'd please join me in congratulating and thanking them for their efforts, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. And again, we appreciate the fact that it is a mutual aid agreement and that it goes both ways, and we appreciate it when you also respond and help us. So thank you.
Thank
So
you.
usually Teresa takes a picture of this. Do we want to?
And she's going,
All right. I have.
she was looking a little deer in the headlights.
Here we go. All right, Chief Hammer, okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, I have several, hopefully they work. Excellent, Chief.
Wait, one more.
One more. 1, 2, 3. Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. I'm always reminded that ultimately the responsibility of city government is to keep our citizens safe. And so our fire department, as well as our police department, do an amazing job of that. So I'll add my personal gratitude for the combined efforts of our police and fire departments. Thank you so much.
Great. All right. And Craig, we'll turn the time over to you for an update on flood preparations.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. And I want to start off with my comments that Paul owes me lunch. So, but just briefly, I know you have a full schedule tonight. We are anticipating some high water with our snow loads, similar to 2011 and 2017. Every morning when I get into work, the first thing I do is check the snowmelt sites and also the river sites. So we have similar snow load to 2011 and 2017. However, we have yet to see the rivers come up and start to flow like we had already seen flows in those years. So we're expecting a little bigger punch when it does start to melt and starts to flow. There are a lot of efforts going on citywide in a lot of divisions right now. And the one thing I would like to say is so nice to see so many different divisions working together throughout the city to try to prepare for what may be coming. So we're doing a lot of preparations on the Blacksmith Fork River through the Country Manor area, the soccer fields. There's an RV park there that we're still working with. And then also in preparation along the Logan River, we had a meeting last Thursday to prepare that area with the Wilson area to work and start this week. So this week, the GIS and engineering are going out and are staking the floodplains in the backyards along the river. And if those of you that live along the river, if you want us to do that, please notify us so we can go in. And they're using the GPS to stake those floodplains so we know the low areas where we need to place sandbags to protect your homes. And then this Saturday is a major event where we're going to be working with the citizens replace a lot of the sandbags along the Logan River in preparation for that. And so we're really looking forward to getting a lot of work done this Saturday, and hopefully things will go well as the spring runoff continues. And then just entertain any questions that you may have.
So if people do want their yard staked, what's the best way to get in touch?
They are going out door to door. You can leave a note on your door stating
Okay.
that it's okay for them to come into your backyard, or you're welcome to call the Public Works office and make sure they have your address on their list.
Did a letter go out on that? Did a letter go out to people or not?
The letter will only be put on homes that were not home, we not.
Okay,
Okay.
so the crews will knock on the door, but again, a lot of people aren't home during the day, and it, makes it difficult for the staff to come back. So like I say, if you're interested, spread the word to your neighbors. Just post a note on the door saying, thank you, you have permission to go in my yard to, stake the floodplain. It just gives those homeowners some information on areas that they may need to plan for.
Let me just add one other thing. Credit to the mayor and council, previous council, since 2011 and 2017, a lot of money has been put into mitigation projects, additional culverts, even removing some homes and building berms. This may be the year where we see all that put into practice and see how that worked. But that has come with a lot of years of effort, money, and support from the city to put those things in place. Hopefully they'll pay off this year.
So can you explain what's happening with the RV park? I know that there's some preparation for them to evacuate, or can you just
Yes,
shed a little light on
we've
that?
sent them a letter through email requesting that they do a voluntary evacuation. We haven't issued a mandatory one. We'll wait and see how the water.
Well, there's that one trailer that's right on the edge of the river.
Yeah, we're very concerned with that.
Is
especially
that
trailer.
is that a mandatory evacuation? Because,
It can be, and
because the
maybe,
Blacksmith Fork is coming up fast.
yeah, it's gonna start coming up pretty quick, so.
Well, it's coming up faster than the Logan River,
Yeah,
right?
it always does, yeah. It'll peak about, even up to a month before the Logan River,
And that could be 2 months from now, right?
yeah. Well, I don't know, but I do know it's coming.
Yeah.
So everyone pray for slow warming, so we have a slow melt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. All right, we will move on now to item number 7, council business, which tonight consists of a planning commission update from Jeannie Simmons.
Planning Commission was last Thursday. They approved a daycare on, in the Woodruff neighborhood. 30 Teal Loop in the Woodruff neighborhood. Westfield Lofts, they approved the subdivision permit because he built some flex space townhome units. He wants to divide them up and be able to have different owners for them. There was a subdivision permit for 1600 Park Avenue, and I'm gonna have Mike, did that pass?
Pardon me?
Did the
Yes.
Park Avenue pass?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a subdivision to amend condominium C from 8 to a 4-lot subdivision at 1531 North, 110 West in the commercial zone. And then there was a discussion, quite a long discussion about a subdivision permit called West Meadows, which is at approximately 1800 North and 500 West, and that was approved for single-family houses. And they did a workshop on the transportation master plan, which they will talk about next meeting, and then it will come to us as a workshop and then to us to review as well.
Okay. Thank you, Jeannie. All right, now we will move on to our action items for tonight. We have some with public hearings and some are just some direct code amendments, so we'll start with those. Craig, you want to walk us through ordinance 2312?
You bet. This is the anti-idling ordinance, 1052-270. This one was patterned after state code authorized the city to pass an ordinance that would allow the city to issue a fine, but needed to give 3 warnings before a fine could be issued for idling more than 2 minutes. The code was amended, state code was amended in 2019, and now we're only required to give 1 warning before issuing a fine. So that just is that change for that, so to 1 warning.
Any questions for Craig or any comments from the council on this proposed amendment?
We've discussed this, and I think this is a good thing, and so I would move acceptance of ordinance 2312.
And I would second that.
Any further discussion on this? All right.
Well, we're complying with state code,
We're
so.
playing. Which is a good thing to do.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor of ordinance 23-12?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, ordinance 2312 passes. Our next code amendment is ordinance 23-13, regulating telecommunication rights of way.
And those two, the telecommunications right of way and the telecommunications tax, I presented to you on the 4th, so if you have any questions, feel free. Otherwise, I don't want to take up too much of your time.
And introduce yourself.
Mohammed Abdullahi,
There we
Assistant
go.
City Attorney.
Thank you.
Come on, let's ask him some questions. And what-
Don't have any questions.
No
I
questions?
don't have any questions either.
All right, why don't we tackle ordinance 23-13 first then?
I move we approved ordinance 23-13.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion on that one? Hearing none, all in favor? Ordinance 23-13?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one passes. And then next, we do have a public hearing scheduled on this, on the next code amendment. So this is the Logan Municipal Code regulating the telecommunications tax rate. It's ordinance 23-14. Mo, would you mind just giving us a quick and dirty on what the implications are for citizens on this before we open the public hearing?
Absolutely. So state code pegs that amount at 3.5%. We just changed ours. It said 4% to 3.5 to state code. Very simple.
Thank you. A tax reduction.
Yep.
For the
For the
telecommunications,
telecommunications, yeah. Exactly.
not for the rest of us.
All right, so I will now open the public hearing for ordinance 23-14. If you would like to make any public comment on that, I invite you to come up to the microphone. Don't all swarm the mic at once. All right, seeing nobody, I'll bring that back to the council for action.
I'll move acceptance 2314.
Second.
Your turn.
I know.
Any further discussion on that? All right, so all in favor of ordinance 23-14?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ordinance 2314 passes. Our next public hearing is the consideration of a proposed resolution amending the work in the right-of-way permit fee schedule. This is resolution 23-09. Paul, come on up. Since you got to like skate on the flood reservoir issues.
I was gonna ask Craig to do this one too, if he would.
You would,
What?
but then you would have owed him another lunch.
Yeah,
Two
exactly.
lunches, yeah.
What kind of reminder would you like? This is adjustments to the fees for our right-of-way permits, including some new fees, adjustments to the deposits and the existing fees. I could throw the chart up that's proposed and answer any questions.
You did raise the deposits, correct?
Yes, as you can see, the basic fee deposit would actually stay $500, but we added some definitions that will make that a much more limited who would qualify for a basic fee. And then the standard permit fee deposit went from 1,000 to 3,000. And if they do a boring permit, that's a new deposit that would equal that at 3,000.
And some of it was done just because people were not coming back in and repairing, correct?
That's a big reason for the big deposit increase. We'd find contractors that would do the work, maybe not do all the restoration or not call for all the inspections. And when we'd call them, it wasn't worth it. to come back for the deposit. It was too small.
So, when you said, so if you get, when we talked about it last time, you could have a standard permit, which would be your $1,500, and, oh, by the way, I have to have, so I have a $3,000 deposit on that. But, oh, by the way, I have to do a no road cut, and I'm boring, so I have to pay a $400 fee for the boring permit. I have to pay there isn't a particular fee for a new road cut. But does my deposit only go to $5,000 or does it go to $11,000?
Typically on the deposits, we would charge
Per permit?
on one permit, if there were multiple facets to that work, we would charge a single deposit, but whichever was the greatest of them. So in this case, it'd be 3,000. Whereas the fees would stack on top of each other.
Okay. But
That-
you're not gonna
that's-
stack the deposits?
Typically no, because it covers the risk on that job, and whatever has the greatest risk would cover the other risk as well. if that
Oh,
makes
okay,
sense.
okay.
We did have a little bit of discussion, sorry. I cut some.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the basic permit fee would be kind of typically more of a homeowner doing their own work, or, you know, a very simple
Correct. The
project.
only way you qualify for that is if you are not disturbing any asphalt or hard surface, curb gutter, those things, and you are only on one property, only not crossing any other properties, would be the only way to qualify for that.
What if you were in the public right of way, a public utility easement?
If you're, same qualifications. If you're in a public utility easement outside the right of way, only within one property and not on any hardscape or anything like that, it would be one. If you cross multiple parcels, it would move it to the standard permit fee. Typically, the reason for that is a property has a sewer lateral that's backed up, and they're calling the contractor to work on their home or on their property only. That's the condition we were trying to accommodate.
I'm thinking about somebody digging through like someone's landscaping that might hit sprinkler lines. I mean, it's through grass, so it wouldn't be asphalt, but it could be, you know.
Correct, and if they're, I guess I'm hopeful that if it's the property owner calling to have that work done on their property,
Right,
we wouldn't have that.
yeah, but what if it's
Problem.
going through someone else's?
Then it's not a basic permit.
Yeah, if
Okay, so any other property other than their own, it's not
Correct.
the base, thank you.
if they cross a property line at all and it's more than one, it would be a standard permit fee.
And just for council's information, as part of the reason we haven't done this, and we just simply haven't had personnel to enforce it. So as part of the new budget that will come to you the first meeting in May for consideration, Public Works will be requesting an additional staff person to be the permit inspector, you know, person. And again, these fees will help cover, you know, paying for that additional employee. So if council chooses to approve that, then we will have an enforcement system in place as well.
Thanks.
A couple other notes, there are some other things we'd like to do with the right-of-way permits that aren't necessarily fees, but there'd be requirements or code issues. And I think as soon as flooding is over, I would like to get into the right-of-way permit code and address some of those things that are not fee-related, but they're requirements.
We'll be
Right.
happy to help you out.
That sounds good. With flooding or the code?
We may not have with, oh, I don't know, I'll do what I can.
When I presented 2 weeks ago, a couple discussion items or questions that have been raised since then. The level of the deposit. I mentioned I have seen some greater than this, and I've seen a lot less than this. The highest I've seen that I've personally seen in any city is about 5,000. I've seen, again, ranges from 500 to 5,000 is what I've found. And then secondly was the possibility of notifications being a requirement. We currently require contractors to notify properties. We truly do not have a good means of tracking that, approving it, of verifying it, those sort of things. If we as a city were to take on that burden and notify for them, I'd like to adjust these fees to account for that, if that's a discussion item you want to have.
Okay, but now it's the
And that's
contractors.
currently not entertained in these fees.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Paul?
Not for me.
Okay, I'll open up the public hearing then. Anybody who would wish to speak to Resolution 23-09, amending the right-of-way permit fee schedule, please come forward. Hi, Tony.
You guys knew I'd be here for this, so thanks for the time. I got a quick outline.
Just make sure you introduce yourself to everybody.
I will.
Thanks, Tony.
Pictures.
Is it like one each?
Yeah, but the pictures have to share.
Oh, okay.
So, Tony Wilson, 1393 Boxwood Circle. I appreciate your efforts on this, especially Paul and Mayor Daines. I think some of my outline touches on this. I think some of it touches on the permit and some of the standards. So somehow it has to coordinate, in my eyes, and this isn't a demand letter, it's a suggestion letter, please. But if it's on UDOT property and they veer onto the city property, I would like it if the city somehow could work with UDOT so that there are 2 permits, somehow. And this can be discussed, but my property, for an example, runs along 10th West, so I get that the utility easement runs north and south. But when they turn east and west, then I think that goes on to city property, or my private city property. And that's where the majority of the damage, in my eyes, happens. I don't know how to coordinate that. I would really like notification of the property owner. This damage happened 2 months ago, again. So I went to Thermo Fisher. They wanted Syringa to upgrade and put a booster onto their internet. And you can erase the names as I say them, so Syringa found me out of Boise for permission to put new internet in my building. Somehow they found me, okay. Then that's the end of it. I hear no contract, no signed contract, no notice from contractor, no anything. Then the next thing that happens is Blue Stake shows up, marks your property, sidewalk. So in the back of your mind, you know that something is going to happen. But I don't know what, because it could go from my property to Mark's to Holly's. So I think if there was some effort, and I would really love it, if you could put some money in the budget to help Paul, so that someone could handle this. Because I think if you look at the contractor and say, did you notify everyone? They're gonna say, yeah, sure. And I don't think it's that hard with technology, phone calls. If I did without a Blue Stake, and I clip a wire, it's very expensive and it's on me and it's my fault. And I think, and you'll have to correct me, I think that the Blue Stake rule scares contractors enough that they'll get it Blue Staked. But I don't think there's anything after that that gives them a scare. The next thing is, I looked on the permit, you have to have a parking plan, traffic safety plan. I think they fill that out, and then I think they forget all about it. So the last time this happened, they pulled all their equipment up on the sidewalk. So I called Paul, within 20 minutes, 2 Logan City inspectors were down there. First thing they said was, you guys cannot park on the sidewalk. So it's difficult for all our equipment, because it parks on RSI Drive or down on the new 1300 North. So then they asked me if they could park in my parking lot. I said, sure, but it's gotta be in the back, because there's too many parks that are full, FedEx trucks, you can't have the prime parking. So they got mad and said, all right, we're gonna park in the deceleration lane. So their tires were on the curb, their other tires are on the white line. So when they open the door, they are in the lane of traffic. And I know that isn't you guys' problem. The contractor should care enough about his employees that they have safe access, but he doesn't. So then you'll see in those pictures, they park all their equipment on the sidewalk, cover up most of the lawn with all of their junk. Here comes somebody riding from Gosner's down to Yesco Signs or somewhere on his bike.
There's nowhere for him to go, so he pulls out of my entrance into oncoming traffic and goes out around the contractors, and there is not 6 inches. So if Paul or someone shows up, they just tell you to forget it, and I don't think that's right. There's no sidewalk closed signs. If you have to park on the sidewalk, they've got to have that, and that's why I like the sidewalk closure fee. And then it can't be just $50, because I'm a contractor, and the $50 doesn't really scare me. I won't follow your rules, and I'll keep a couple of 50s in my wallet. Here you go, Paul, and here you go, Paul. So something has to change there. I would like it if the city inspectors could take some pictures. I don't know if this is policy, of before, a picture when they have to cover up the hole. And I don't know if that's policy. This particular instance, they dug their trench, found about 8 conduits, which they would, in a utility easement, took a sledgehammer in that picture, broke a hole through the conduit, not knowing which one it was, and then they were lucky, and it was a vacant conduit that I put in there 20 years ago at Theo Thompson's request for the future. If they'd have broke a regular conduit, they would have just covered it. And I asked the guy what he was doing and why that conduit was broken, and he covered it with that blue rag. So I would like it if they took some pictures. I think if they showed up, if that inspection fee isn't enough, I don't know how you work the building permit fees, but everybody calls for footing, foundation, framing, cover up, all of those inspections, and that's built into the fee. And there needs to be enough money in this that the inspector can come, take a picture, those guys can do the work, and then they should have to call and come back and take a picture of it completed before they get to cover up the hole. And that is how it is with me. If I put rebar in, pour the concrete, and no one sees it, I will tear it down. It's just not, but if I know that I'll tear it down, I will comply. And that never mattered. If it was President's Day and I wanted to work on Monday and the city was closed, I better find something else to do. And that is the way this should be. If we are short of staff because it's a Friday, if staff has gone to a training, that is not the city's problem, that's the contractor's. And he should take that into account. And if it's, I don't know, if it's a 5-day job, you better figure 6 or whatever, and just call and get your permits in line. And if you don't do that, you go back another day, and that's just the way it is. So that was just about to the bottom. I think the fine somehow should be a fine on here, maybe double the permit. I don't know how you guys are gonna police that. I'm glad I'm not in Paul's shoes. The repairs, it says, are comparable. I would like the language changed to better than before. And I'm going to speak out of turn, but I've talked to Tech Electric, Whitaker's, Cache Valley Electric. I don't think, and you'll have to back me up on this, there's ever a problem with those guys. It's better than before. The other guys, it is not. So what is comparable? And I'm not the golf course or the country club, but if my lawn isn't put back somewhat decent, the next time the guy sees that it's 85% decent, he'll come in at 60%, and before long, the right-of-way is just a goner. And I think it should be better than before. You can see that one picture with the drain, and I drew some dotted lines where it's settled in 3 weeks. It's settled 4 inches. I asked them if they're going to put in new sod. They said, no, there's no sod available. I know that. That's 1st February. But to take and cut it up in little chunks, turn it over, knock the chunks off, and then put 75 little chunks back down is not better. It isn't even comparable. And I don't know how we argue that, but I'm prepared to. I think when they're done with the work, there should be a 30-day maximum period to fix what's happened. Last time it happened, and Mayor Danes helped me, Jeannie and Tom came down and looked at it. That happened in November. I didn't expect a lot, because I knew winter was coming. But by the 15th of April, they'd had plenty of opportunities, especially last year, to come back and fix it, and they just chose not to. A lot of the guys show up with not the means to go for new dirt, haul off the junk, so all the junk goes back in the hole, and you go to Tech Electric, he's got a pile of gravel, a pile of pit run, a pile of topsoil, and Mr. Dobbs the same way. They can fix it. If there's not sod, it'll be raked. So strangely, they put the sod back, but they ripped the sidewalk up to put it in their utility box, and it was too cold to pour concrete. So it's been gravel, which probably passes as a hard surface, but it's been warm enough for the last month that you could have put down a 3 foot by 3 foot square of concrete. And it's just because for them it isn't convenient. The other thing, and I don't know, you'll have to think on this, most of the time this happens, it happens on a Thursday or a Friday. And I've gone back for 4 years on my notes. And every time, and it's happened 7 times, it's been a Thursday or a Friday. And I don't know if this is because they know UDOT is on 410 workday. I don't know the reason, but that is just strange. And they are cleaned up if they have to work until dark by Friday, and then they are gone. And they won't come back. And then one other thing, and I don't mean this prejudice by any means, but when I got down there wasn't anyone that chose to speak to me in English that I could understand. So the competent person, per se, had gone to another job or to run errands. So I asked them to stop, and it was, don't understand you. So if the competent person can't be there, there needs to be a competent person of record, which shouldn't be too hard. Mark's in charge, I'm the assistant. You guys know who to call, and we can at least communicate, because they kept on digging. And then I came down the next morning to try and get a little bit of information, and Sharon was gone, kind of everyone was gone, and it was the new girl up front. And I just asked if I could see the paperwork to try and know who to call, and I couldn't see that because of a grammar report, and that would take me probably a week. So that was just my thought, is if the property owner requests to see the paperwork or what's happening, and you'll have to work with legal and everyone else on this, but I don't think that's a big ask for the guy to find out what's happening. And on the permits and the fees, I think it's a start. I don't know, someone would have to look into how much damage we have at residential and then commercial, but I would like Logan City to lead the standard on this deposit, because the last time this happened, it was close to $3,000. My son and I did the majority of work for minimal labor, and that honestly does not cover sprinklers, topsoil, digging the mess, hauling it to the dump, putting it back, and you shouldn't have to do that. Make your kids work for free, right? And so I don't think 3,000 covers it. And then when I submitted the bill to Niles Fugel, it got submitted, passed around, approved, it's gone here, it's gone there, it's gone here, it's gone there, and it never happened until Mayor Danes called and said, this stops pretty much today, we would like a check. And I got my check in November. And I just think that's silly, because I don't know how, I don't know what happened to their deposit, but my credit card had $3,000 on it, which I paid, but I was still out with $3,000. So anyway, thanks for your time, that's my 2 cents. And it's just totally what I've seen and an opinion, but I support Paul and Sam 100% on one more staffing person, some teeth from legal on enforcement, and it really, you shouldn't be able to park on the sidewalk. There's one picture there, kind of where they started, and then as they drove and came back and went here and there, they came back, pulled across traffic. So there's one car going this way, two of their cars going this way, so opposing traffic, which is against the law anywhere. And then the trailer and the truck were backed right to the entrance. So when my tenants pulled out, you physically impossible to see what was coming in the first lane of traffic, which you would pull out in. And those guys, if they're hitting the green light, they're going 50 miles an hour. And you can't pull out. And so there's a line of sight triangle. It just shouldn't happen. And they should know that you've got to find a place to park. And it is crummy, but it is 3/4 of a block away. So make some arrangements, call me. If they'd call, I'd block off 2 or 3 parking stalls. I'd try and be nice, but not after they aren't so great. So anyway, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Any other comments? All right, I will bring it back to council for action then.
Madam Chair, there's a lot of detail in what Tony said, and I appreciate his courage in saying and bringing the detail and all the pictures. I would suggest that this be given some time to work out with appropriate authorities so that we could adjust whatever's up here with some of the issues that were brought. So that's my suggestion. I'd move that we continue this.
So Tom, I would argue with you on that. I would like to see us get this in place
And we can add.
and begin to do some analysis so that we can, and task them to come back and let us know how it's going in implementation and if it's enough.
And Paul had said he would come up with some additional details after the flooding season is over
And we can
again.
add to it.
So again, this would at least give us a starting point to kind of put a stake in the ground and say, we need to start doing this. But I think you're right, it may need a little tweaking, but at least it's a starting
Need
place.
to get those higher deposits in place.
Yeah.
So would you like to, one thing we could do is we could identify to have it be in the minutes that, I don't know, in 60 days that we ask Paul to come back with recommendations, or 90 days.
I would
So
say
that
90.
90 days, so that it's after
After
flood
flood
season,
season.
and that those issues can be addressed, and that it be brought to the council in 90 days.
I just wondered how long, I mean, it would only take 2 weeks or so to tweak this thing. What's wrong with getting it right rather than going back and correcting it?
I think his point was that with the flood season right now, he doesn't have the manpower at the time to
really do it.
to do that, so.
You put off the flood.
Can you put off the flood wall? Do you have a comment on that, on whether it would be fortuitous to just act on it now, or what the timeline would be for reviewing and maybe implementing some of these suggestions?
I would tend to agree with your thoughts of getting something in place. I think the tweaks to the actual fee schedule will be fairly minimal. I think most of the concerns that have been raised, and I had a chance, the mayor forwarded it to me prior to the meeting to read through that letter. Most of them will be standards and code related. And so I think most of them will come in there. The only thing I see from the concerns that have been raised in the fee schedule would be potentially the deposit. That's a tough one. These permits cover such a wide variety of projects, from small to huge. And I've tried to cover most of them. I think it could be increased. There's times where it's going to be too small, there's no question. But if we made it to the absolute extreme case, I think it would overshadow the smaller projects and not be an undue burden at that point.
Well, it
That's
may-
my thought.
Yeah, it may be that at some point we want to evaluate whether you want to add like a standard permit fee and then an extended permit fee. So the standard is so many blocks or so many, covers
Yeah.
so much area, and a larger one with a larger deposit covers a greater,
I think there will be tweaks to this. We were just talking about it with staff earlier today. And we were like wanting to get it perfect and said, what are we missing? What are these concerns raised? And we anticipate needing to tweak it, things, you don't know what you don't know. And I anticipate that. One other thought I'll throw out, I know there are a few large projects coming that want to submit permit applications, and we're completely revamping the application form itself. And I've asked them to do me a favor and wait till this is done, so I don't turn around and say, now redo your work with a new application, and they've done that thus far. I think they're all coming in later this week, which is okay. If we continue it, we'll deal with it. But they have voluntarily held off, which I appreciated.
Thanks, Paul.
So, point well taken, and so I'll withdraw that.
Okay.
Continuation.
I'll move we approve resolution 2309.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor of resolution 23-09?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that resolution passes. Our next public hearing is on a budget adjustment. Rich, it is like been almost an hour we haven't heard from you. It's shocking. So this is a public hearing on resolution 23-08. It's a budget adjustment appropriating 1.8 million in funding received from the Cache Metropolitan Planning Organization, or the CMPO, toward the 1200 East roundabouts. About 5,000 in additional grant funding for the fire department for EMS equipment, and 95,000 about funds from the state of Utah for alcohol enforcement. Any questions for Rich before we open the public hearing?
You don't even have to talk.
Perfect.
All right, at this time then I'll open up the public hearing for resolution 23-08. If you'd like to comment on this or weigh in on it, please come up to the microphone. Seeing nobody, I will bring that back to the council for action.
I move for approval of resolution 23-08.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 23-08, resolution passes. Our next public hearing is on a code amendment to the residential and commercial standards. It's ordinance 23-09. Mike, would you like to walk us through this?
Sure. Thank you. This is ordinance 23-09. We're proposing to amend our land development code, chapters 1707, 08, and 10. We workshopped this probably 4 weeks ago, so I'll just go back through it for your benefit, if you don't mind. In 1707, in the residential development standards, the primary interest behind this one is that we've modified our open space, landscape, usable outdoor space standards. So we're going through and changing all of our spec sheets to update the language. We also are proposing to increase the maximum height of accessory buildings from 15 to 20 feet. Added a requirement for front facade transparency, 25% in the multifamily zones. Added minimum lot width and minimum lot size standards in the MR12 zone for single family detached residential. Updated the neighborhood center zone, parking standards, no drive-throughs, transparency, landscaping, usable outdoor space. And that was driven by a project that we saw several months ago. In 08, we just updated the structure type in the, there's a table in there that defines which types of structures you can put in each zone. And we changed that for the neighborhood center zone to permit single family and multifamily structures. And then in the 1710 commercial development standards, again, those were spec sheets, updated all the references to open space, landscape, usable outdoor space. Really, it's more about nomenclature than it is about standards for that. And then Town Center 1, the development standards for that specific zone, proposing a minimum building height of 27.5 feet on all street frontages. Minimum number of building stories or floors is 2. And the idea behind that is to get bigger buildings, more massive buildings up along the street in that Town Center 1 zone. Increase the transparency requirements, basically more windows or glass, doorways. Put a greater emphasis on building design, so foresight architecture, pedestrian entry onto the street. Site design, no drive-through lanes in TC1. And then just currently, I went back through and counted the drive-throughs. There are 13 of them in TC1. So food banks, credit unions, dry cleaners, post office, things like that. So we may want to think about drive-throughs in TC1, maybe not say none altogether, but maybe just none that front onto Main Street or 4th North, and maybe they're okay on the backside of the property. we might have some discussion about that. The other part of TC1 is modify the parking requirements, and wanted to try to incentivize some development down there with reduced parking requirements. So offering a 50% commercial parking reduction if you front Main or Fourth, and you have these types of sales and service category of uses, so general sales, general service, grocery, restaurant, or food, and then you get an alternative parking plan approved. And then you could go to 100% reduction, same situation, but you've got at least half the property covered with building, and at least 25% is covered with usable outdoor space. So the idea is to put in more building, more usable outdoor space, and then figure out how to work the parking within the market itself. And then any kind of change of use in those buildings would trigger a full parking compliance.
So this is just on the commercial parking requirement. If it's got housing, it would not affect the residential parking requirement.
So that, any questions?
I know there was a lot of discussion at Planning Commission. Can you talk to us a little bit about why there is a need to increase the height of accessory structures?
You mean like a detached garage?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's come up over the years about the ability to say, house my RV or my boat. And the current standard of 15 feet makes it tough to build a garage wide enough and tall enough to house like that type of equipment. The height of a building is measured basically the midpoint of the roof structure. So you go from the eaves to gable, find a point there at 15 feet. That's the current height limitation. And in my time with the city, we've had to have one roof. Basically, they built it, exceeded that height, they had to cut that top off and redesign the roof structure. But we don't get a ton of requests for it, but we do get some requests about building a wider or a bigger garage. And it's not to slip in any kind of residential living quarters up there. It is just to make it more flexible in how you design a garage. So steeper pitched roof, maybe a bigger footprint, as opposed to forcing people to put in a wider, flatter roof. So.
Well, didn't we also just adjust the code in terms of RV and where that they have to be parked behind the, so it just,
Front facade.
yeah, the front to the side, so it gives people a little more
More
option if they
latitude,
want to
yeah.
provide a garage that houses that equipment.
I think an RV door is probably 10 feet.
We looked it up. It was smaller than you thought it was.
Yeah,
The
9.5
highest,
feet.
yeah, the tallest RV, I can't remember exactly how tall, they can't be any taller than so high.
So it hit a bridge when they drive down the highway.
Yeah, something like that. But
But there was discussion, we originally just proposed accessory buildings at 35-foot height just to match the house, because I can build a house with 35 feet, so why can't I build a detached garage? And there was some pushback on that. So we ended up down at 20 feet.
okay, thank you.
Was there any, I recall we received an email about this. That's the only public comment I'm aware of. Is there any other public comment?
Generally, no, you did get an email about the TC1 development
Correct.
standards. And, you know, this will stop all development in its tracks, but it came from a broker. So they didn't like the fact that you had to build a taller building, you had to put it up on the street, which is already required.
I thought he didn't like no drive-through.
No
They
drive-through
didn't like the
was part of the
drive-through
question.
limitation on that.
So,
Okay, any,
You said we had 13 drive-throughs currently, mostly banks. There's like a dry cleaner downtown that I'm familiar
Dry
with.
cleaner, there's one over even behind Smith's, the old Macy's in
Yeah.
that area. Yeah, 13, I'm surprised there were that many.
I wonder, how many, do you know how many of those actually front Main Street or Fourth North?
Got a photo.
So would in and out be illegal? No? Under that?
Yeah, the proposal is to eliminate them. So as far as ones fronting Main Street, you've got Zions Bank is exposed to Main Street, doesn't front it. You've got this bank building on, this is Fourth and Main. There's an entrance with a drive-through right there. In-N-Out Burger's got one that fronts Main. I think KFC wraps around the building, but it's still accessible for Taco Time. They're kind of a weird layout.
That is a
Yeah,
really
they-
weird layout.
Yeah. And the trend is to go bigger, wider, you know, 2s and 3s. COVID has changed a little bit of it's changed quite a bit, the food, the fast casual, people would rather go through a drive-through as opposed to go inside.
What's the red star?
That was a discussion we had about building frontage. Yeah, it's just the little black cars show where the drive-throughs are. Bank, this is the dry cleaners down here, bank, credit union, Burger King, well, the old Burger King that comes out on the main. That's it.
Any questions for Mike before we open it up?
Somebody brought up the RVs. Can you clarify for me, can RVs be parked in front of the house on a driveway?
Yes, they can be parked in a driveway in front of a house.
For a long period of time?
Can't be stored there, but they can be parked there.
Oh. If you're storing your RV, it has to be behind the front facade of your house.
Well, people park there for years.
And that's been that rule's been in place though, that they have to be behind the front of the house for years, but doesn't mean people abide by it apparently.
So let me get it straight. It's illegal to park an RV in front of the house.
On a long-term basis, yes.
No, you can park in front of the house in a driveway.
I called your office last week about 2 violations in my vicinity, and he said, no, it's legal. So there's a little confusion there.
And the language that came through allows them to be parked in the front of a house. You can park it up there, but long-term storage, you gotta put it on the side or the back of the building.
And long-term is how long? I mean,
we don't define that. It's if you're not using it, it's not licensed.
If it's covered with a
It's covered
cloth
with
and.
a tarp, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
has flat tires.
Flat tires.
so 2 days is okay, but 2 weeks is not.
That one's a really tough one. That came from our enforcement people about allowing for the parking in front of a house because we see that quite often when they are out enforcing. The question is, how long can you park there? I don't have the right answer for you. I don't know the number of days or time or hours. But that's what came through our last code amendment. We had that, part of that code language.
We probably ought to put something in there.
Any other questions for Mike before I open public hearing? Might as well stay there, Mike, because I'm sure there'll be more questions. All right, this is a public hearing, so anyone who would like to speak to ordinance 23-09, the code amendment related to residential and commercial standards, state your name and make sure you signed in.
Hi, Dr. Gary Yost. I wanted to know, how do you specify usable outdoor space compared to the open space in landscaping? What makes it more usable, and are we getting more of it in the new residential development standards where outdoor space is actually being used by people instead of just being left to look pretty? Because to me, I had foster kids for so many years. I didn't need it to look pretty, I needed it to be usable. And that was more important than whether or not the front lawn was looking pretty. And now my next door neighbor has his grandkids coming over, and they use my lawn. And I don't really mind, except when they leave things, like Nerf darts that my dogs could get into. But basically, the outdoor space should be usable for people and not just looking pretty. Landscaping, we have more xeriscaping coming, and I just wanted to know what the differences are so that there are some residents who really can't afford to make the open space look beautiful with landscaping, unless, of course, they're just building something new. So that's my question.
Thanks, Dr. Yost. Any other comments on public hearing for ordinance 23-09? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Mike, would you like, I've been looking for the definition of usable outdoor space.
Yeah,
My computer's not quick enough, can you
I can cover it.
clarify it? Thank you.
Under the current code or the previous standards, we require a certain set aside of open space and usable outdoor space. So we use those two terms. But within the definition of usable outdoor space, we also include open space. Open space are things like along a river, park, just things you would envision as being open areas that you can go out and either enjoy visually or go out and enjoy it physically. So we changed the language or the nomenclature to say on multifamily projects and commercial projects or industrial projects, you have to provide landscaping, that pretty stuff around the building that softens the building, and then usable outdoor space, which would be park space, benches, places where the public can gather, as opposed to providing open space. Because when you say give us open space, we're assuming you're going to give us some floodplain or a wetland, but not all sites have that. So we change it so that you're going to give us the same amount of set aside, but now it's just called differently and labeled a little bit differently. So we still want some of the pretty stuff around the building, but we also want you to give us things that are more usable and accessible. Hope that answers the question.
Any other discussion or questions for Mike? I guess, do we want to address the drive-through question?
Do we want to address it?
Like,
Well, there's a
because
point.
there was a point made that perhaps we allow drive-throughs, but maybe identify that they're access point.
Oh, not on Main Street or
Not
Fourth
on
North?
Main Street. But that otherwise drive-throughs might be allowed. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's a good idea. Keeping it off of the main street, or, excuse me, the presentation to the road.
Can you put the map back up with the,
Yeah, that would be,
and
we do have precedent where there are a lot of drive-throughs and some are
Well,
quite
the
functional.
map that shows TC1 is probably the best map
yeah,
of
to
all.
look at. Yeah, there we go.
It's only 1 block wide in each direction on Main Street. So,
The upper part is 5th, Main Street, and it goes down to 2nd South.
to my mind, you're only dealing with half a block in each direction is,
But it would allow for drive-throughs on 3rd, 2nd, Center, 1st South, if it was just for 4th and Main. So
3rd,
that would be a couple.
3rd, 2nd.
Gonna happen in the center.
Because if we're saying not on Center or 4th North, that would allow drive-through entrances on all of those other streets. If we're allowing drive-throughs in TC1.
I think the goal is it's not necessarily the entrance, it's the actual physical location of the drive-through in front of the building, between the building and the roadway. So, In-N-Out's got a drive-through between most of the building and the roadway. It came up when the other project on the opposing corner came up. It was a lot of drive-through. The building wasn't really the focal point of that property. The goal is you want to have that building up there on the line so that it's interactive with the pedestrian going by. See, look in the window, hey, I want to go in there, as
Makes
opposed
it
to a car.
walkable.
And so the challenge is the way those types of uses are now laid out. Generally, they circulate around that building in order to make the order, drive around, and get my food. But if we say, yeah, you can do a drive-through, you can't put that adjacent to the street, and that forces you, if you really want one, to get creative in how you lay out your site. If you really want to drive through, and maybe you're going to a situation where it's pick up food only, as opposed, I do it on my app, I go stop, pick it up, and away I go, as opposed to having this long circuitous drive-through around.
But I will say, in that whole area right now, the only circuitous drive-through is In-N-Out. The rest of them are,
Through a building.
yeah, they are much more,
So Zion's would
they are
be
much
legal.
more refined in terms of drive-through.
Their center block kind of area.
Yeah, the rest of them they're all either behind the building or on the side of the building. A couple
Yeah.
obviously have a weird layout to get into it and then around and get back out on the street. But again, what we're trying to avoid is the In-N-Out or Chick-fil-A types of
Is
drive.
it like Cache Valley Banks
What
behind
about
the building?
KFC? KFC comes in,
KFC is you go around the back of the building, not the front of the building.
Yeah.
and then you come out onto Fourth, don't you?
But it's not around the front
So
of the
that would be
building.
legal.
No, currently the proposal is no drive-throughs.
Yeah.
Well, what we're talking about is,
No, that wouldn't be legal because it's on Fourth North.
Right. So is there
I'm not inclined to change it.
from
just
what
be-
this is proposed?
From what this is proposing, because I do believe that, unless we can specify that it has to be not around, the front of a building somehow, then I don't care. But, that whole idea of getting TC1 building centric at the street level goes sideways when you add a drive-through around the front of a building. So,
Well, could we codify it to say, no drives around the front of the building, but you could have it along, like the laundry, where it comes out onto a street, or behind it, like Zions Bank. That would be acceptable to me, so just say, so we're not coming around the street face of the building.
even on Main Street and Fourth North?
Well, it would mean a drive entry, that's the problem.
Problem.
So,
It may be that you go with the recommendation, and then if you do get a project that comes in that has a different way of doing it, then you respond or react that way to that with another code amendment. I mean, if that's right as the top, it's really great.
Yeah.
But this was a reaction to the design we saw, that people were like, oh, wait a sec, this is getting a little out of hand.
Yeah.
because, the last thing we really want is a bunch of driveways between the sidewalk and a busy street
In our town center.
in the town center. So, I don't know, I'm fine with it the way it is. But,
I don't see a drive-through going in on Center Street very well. Is that what we want? What do we want for town center? Do we want all our buildings up close? Do we want them taller? I mean, this is kind of what we're shooting for. The point's already been raised too, that, drive-throughs kind of tend to increase our air pollution. We already have a lot of traffic downtown, so do we want to make that greater, or do we want to try and decrease that with fewer vehicles sitting and idling? So I think that's a valid point as well too, so.
So am I hearing consensus to leave it?
Could you guys
Does
speak
anyone
up?
want to make an
Speak up a
amendment?
little
Does
bit.
anyone want to make amendment to it, or?
I will move we approve ordinance 23-09 the way it is, and if there's a second, then we can go from there.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion?
What do you think, Tom? You okay with drive-throughs, or it's like something
Well,
we can look at on a?
I think some have not deteriorated. I mean, you go to Zions Bank, that hasn't hurt it. Neither has the laundry, KFC, that hasn't hurt it. So I would say that not having it in front of the building, I would prohibit that, but I would allow it, and maybe it's a conditional thing, I don't know, to allow it either to the rear or to the back. I mean, there's some good businesses that have it and they haven't hurt us. And they're still up on front.
But they're not gonna they don't get to have theirs taken away.
I know, but
Okay.
for a future building, for a future project.
So not being an architect or an engineer, if we do say no drive-throughs in the front of the building, how does that even allow anything to be done based on these properties? Like, are we modifying it for something that is probably never, is not really possible?
Never say never.
Never say never.
We are by no means a large city, but you go into town centers in slightly larger cities than ours, and there are no drive-throughs that I can think of. You're trying to limit vehicles going through smaller, narrower streets, and it just doesn't make sense to encourage that if that's what we want for our town center. But if we want a more open town center, then we would want possibly drive-throughs,
But we want a walkable town
I would
center.
rather have a walkable town center, so that's why I seconded, because I like what's going on Center Street. I think we can do that in some other places, and it is not a great place to encourage a drive-through. I want to run people over as they're coming down the sidewalk on their electric mobile device. I think that's a little dangerous, so. It just depends on what we envision for downtown. I love the improvements that we've done. We've done some amazing things for downtown, and I think there's a lot of other places for drive-throughs, and downtown is not. So that's just me.
Any further discussion then, or are we ready to call the question?
Yeah, I'm not so bent on this thing that I'm gonna fight on it. It's, do you want to?
Let's go, Tom.
You know, it's,
I don't think that, there's no open.
There's no fighting in city council.
Allowed in town center.
No crying.
I think there's good points, and, you know, I'm not sure it's a huge black and white. kind of
I think
thing.
I'm kind of like what Mike said. If a project comes and it's like amazing, we just go, ooh, this fits with what we're doing. But otherwise, my vision, it does not fit. But
So was this a point of discussion at planning and zoning, or is this just something Mike has come up in the last 30 days, the drive-through thing?
Well, when I did the recount, I thought, ooh, we have a lot of them in there, because we did talk a little bit about it at P and Z. Just want to make sure we covered it adequately so that it's on the record that, you know, we talked about the design aesthetic at TC1, and, you know, design and drive-throughs may not be appropriate in a downtown setting.
Any further discussion? All right, let's call the vote. All those in favor of ordinance 23-09?
I
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
You have to vote one of these days.
Oh, sorry. My absence of voting is an aye. I'll just clarify that, actually. My absence of saying nothing is an aye.
I don't think
You've been
it's legal.
overwhelmed.
Maybe
with
not legal, but I
your,
will.
overwhelmed with your
I'm just
chair,
saying,
you know,
Amy.
and your chair responsibility.
You
I
gotta go
haven't
on,
been here for a while, I'm forgetting what I'm supposed to do. All right, our next public hearing is on another code amendment that comes to us from planning and zoning. This is ordinance 23-10, consideration of proposed code amendment on the public zone and homeless shelters. So, Mike, anything you'd like to review with us before we open the public hearing?
Yeah, this just code amendments that deal with the public zones, the public use tables, public development standards, and also the definition section. So this was raised a few months ago. I think internally we had some discussion about the way our current community service definition, the way it reads. It's kind of broad, but it's also, you could read it very narrowly and say it doesn't allow certain things. And so when the warming center became a reality, we started talking about, well, what's the next step? You know, what if we do a homeless shelter, a homeless resource center? And then the receiving center came into play when we had conversations at the executive level about the one down in Farmington, about some of the impacts to fire response and police response. So we thought, well, let's try to get ahead of the game so that if we do have something like that coming our way, let's make sure we're prepared for it. So the proposal in these code languages is it creates both a legislative and a public process for siting and permitting through a rezone and a CUP process. So the idea is you set up the public zone as a zoning classification that would be appropriate for these types of uses, and then someone would have to go through and apply for a rezone, find a site, place it on the site. That provides a legislative process which is open to the public to make a decision on the siting of that type of a use. You know, is it good or bad? What do you all think? And then the CUP, the conditional use process, goes back to the planning commission, and there they can put conditions on it, you know, whether it's for parking or hours of operation, things like that. So the idea is to create a transparency in a process as opposed to somebody making a decision to put something like that somewhere based on a broad definition of community service. So that was the whole kind of the intent behind this. So in the specific code languages, in 1713, we just added intent language that broadens the applicability of the public zone to nonprofits. And then in 1714, we added behavioral mental health receiving centers, homeless resource centers, homeless shelters, also religious institutions and conditional use in the use table. And then in 15, we added a proximity standard of 300 feet from a community location. So, you know, based on the state alcohol regulations, so parks, schools, churches, libraries, things like that, there may be a need to have some kind of separation of a homeless shelter from a park. 300 feet is not a huge amount, but it's still a little bit of a physical separation. And then we added definitions for those above uses. They're in your pack. I won't go through them, but here's just what it looks like with the distancing requirement. You know, if this is one of our neighborhood parks, so this just shows you approximately what 300 feet looks like around that. So basically, it's a half to a 3/4 of a block away. So Happy to answer your questions.
So actually, as I read it, I think churches is not included in the proximity zone in the language that was given to us.
But single-family houses were.
Right, but not churches for that 300 foot.
It's based on, look what the language says. The idea was to follow or mimic the state law for alcohol.
But when you look at it, so it reads, a homeless shelter, homeless resource center, or behavioral and mental health receiving center shall not be located within 300 feet of a community location, public or private school, public park, public playground, daycare, nursery, or library, or residentially zoned property.
Yep, that's what it says.
So what zone are they currently okay to build in?
Well, that's the question is are they currently allowed by the code? And it just depends on how, I guess, how broad or how narrow you define or you consider a homeless shelter or resource center. Our community services definition, let me find it.
I mean, are they approved to build in commercial currently and in?
Yeah, you could, you could do a community service in most zones. And it's again, it's the use of a public or a nonprofit or a charitable nature providing a local service to people of the community. Generally, the service is provided on site or there are employees at the site on a regular basis. The service is always ongoing, not for special events. The use may provide special counseling, education, or training of a public, nonprofit, or charitable nature. And it does not include facilities or uses which house or serve adjudicated youth offenders, proctor homes, group homes, serving as transitional facilities for criminally convicted persons or other group homes as defined by the state or federal law. So if you read that very narrowly, the intent of this was to allow for, like maybe a food bank or the low efficient types of application, but is it broad enough to say you can put in a full-blown homeless shelter downtown? So that's why we're trying to get some clarification. But generally, in the use tables, community service is allowed pretty much across the city in most zones, whether it's permitted use or conditional use.
Any other questions for Mike? So to me, as I looked at this, it's just like, we have restaurants broken out by 3 different types. We have lots of other services that are broken out by specific types. So I think the intent of this was to just clarify where those, where homeless shelters or homeless resource centers could go more specifically, just as we specify other types of organizations, like daycare by size is specified very specifically.
Right.
So that was trying to clarify that, what is a community service and does that fall underneath it? So that was a request.
And
that
these
came
types
about.
of uses tend to be, they tend to get a lot of people upset or riled up if they, don't know that one's coming down the street from them. So it's better to try to get ahead of that and have that public process. And it may be a challenging process to go through, but if your project is good, it will elevate itself to the top. It will come out on top. But it's better than trying to sneak it in and say, well, we're going to fall into this definition. Let's put it there and have a nice day. When in fact we really should be trying to engage people, because those people, they invest in their home, their property. They have a right to know what's going on. So it's better to have that transparency.
So can you just clarify too that the definition change or the change in the public, adding that 3rd paragraph and what falls underneath public? The public zone?
Under the public zone?
Yeah, just for the people present, because, so 17, I can just read it. So 1713.02 is the public zone is appropriate for facilities or uses owned and managed. So this is an addition. Either by a public entity or nonprofit entity that are unique, may be incompatible with a wide range of uses, are very site-specific in terms of their location, and because of the unique nature of their intended use, function, and purpose, do indirectly serve and benefit the broader public. So I think there's some question. This doesn't mean that it's public land, it's the public zone.
Yeah, so I added that language to broaden out what the scope of the public zone is. When you read the other intent language above it, it really gets at those publicly owned properties, City Hall, Utah State, things that are City Park, Cache County. This is trying to broaden it out because we don't use the public zone that broadly for anything else. So this gives you that zoning mechanism to get there. So as opposed to putting in like say TC1, go apply for a TC1 rezone. Well, that's got a lot of other uses that go with that zone that may not be appropriate for the site you're looking at. This is very narrow in terms of what the uses are that are allowed in that zone. So that's trying to narrow down what the range of uses are as well as the avenue to get there.
So the avenue is that nonprofit A wants to build a homeless shelter, and the location they've chosen is, 1039 North, 1400 West, or something like that. That I don't even know if that's an address, but, and that particular piece of property right now is zoned MR6. So they would come with their proposal to the planning commission, and they would say, we would like to rezone this as a public piece of property for this specific use. And
Is that how that would?
and that is how that would work?
That's correct.
Okay,
And it's really, there's a two-part process to it. The planning commission would make the legislative recommendation to you, to this group,
right,
on the rezone elements, so
Right.
that would get elevated to this level. They would make a decision on the actual project itself, the design, the layout, the mechanics of it.
and make any conditional use requirements with respect to
Correct.
parking or noise or, you know.
Hours of operation, lighting, things like that, things that may bleed off the site and affect others.
Okay,
Correct.
all right. Just wanted to make that really clear.
Any other questions for Mike before we open the public hearing? Tom, you have any other questions? All right,
Oh, I do have one. So was the 300-foot requirement intended to include single family, or was it intended to include churches?
Good question, Lee. It was intended to mirror this state law for alcohol.
And that is churches, parks, schools, libraries.
Yes, public or private school, public park, public playground, daycare, nursery, or library.
There was no daycare and nursery in is there daycare and nursery in the,
No, maybe not. This is the language that I found on the state DABC. But yeah, the intent was not to exclude it within 300 feet of residential zone property.
okay. That got put in from Airbnbs or something.
Yeah,
but the daycare and the nursery was in intentional inclusion?
at this point I'd say it was. But I can't tell you what I wrote
Okay,
2 months ago.
all right. Okay, any other
Yeah,
questions?
The problem with daycare and nursery is that, which comes first, the chicken or there's daycares all over the place.
Yeah.
And so that makes it a little bit challenging to me, to include that.
Okay,
But anyway,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming it means, is it nursery like Mark's Nursery?
No.
Yes.
nursery like,
The old-fashioned nursery term for little.
I don't know if the
babies.
trees would complain,
They
but
just put them in daycares.
yeah, trees wouldn't complain.
The intent is really to mirror the state guidelines on alcohol and distancing.
Okay. So before I open the public hearing, I at least did receive one letter today about this related to crisis receiving centers from Dr. Red. So I don't know if everybody
I got
got that
that
and had a
too.
chance to look at that, but we can address that after the public hearing. All right, at this time, I will open up the public hearing for, what is this one? Ordinance
23-10.
23-10. Please approach. Identify yourself and you state your name.
do you want time?
Dr. Gail Yost, I live in Logan, and I'm on the Homeless Council. So at least as a citizen, I'm not with any particular agency, but my background, having been in working at Bragg for 8 years in the 80s, gave me an insight into homelessness that at the time they told the staff, the governing board told the staff that there weren't any homeless. And we know that's not true. I was at a meeting, a religious leaders meeting that I would go to every month for breakfast, and was asked if, at the time, in the 80s, we could use a soup kitchen. And I said, probably. Well, the reporter reported it as I suggested it, and of course I was given a whole scolding for it. However, we are at a different place now. And I think it is the resource center, would the resource center include a soup kitchen? Or would that be a different definition? Because it would be a resource center for homeless and for others who are about to be homeless or on the edge. And sometimes we have to feed people before we can teach them how to better their lives or how to get out of the situation. And so I ran a food bank at the time. It was a very tiny thing, nothing like the community food pantry that we have now, and that's due to a Vista volunteer. But I really am still interested. Would that be covered under a resource center? Because I think the food bank does a great job in the food pantry. But sometimes you need to directly feed people if they don't have a place to live. How do you feed people with just giving them food if they can't prepare it to mean something to them? So that is the reason I'm asking the question, is that legal under those resource centers?
Says homeless resource center means an establishment in which co-located supportive services such as sleeping, bath, eating, laundry facilities, and house case management is provided on an emergency basis for individuals experiencing homelessness. Additional services may include preparation and distribution of food, medical care and treatment, behavioral and mental health counseling, education, instruction, and vocational training. So my answer would be yes.
Thank you. That is very defined. Thank you very much.
Anyone else would like to speak to this point?
Matthew Foxwesty. First off, I like the point of not having any drive-throughs in downtown. So if you're in a car, you might as well drive the distance anyways to get to a car or to whatever drive-through place there is. I think it's pretty telling if we consider homeless shelters in the same vein as alcohol in the first place and try and pour them or distance them away and keep it treated as an eyesore. I think that feeds into the problem instead of trying to fix it. I think a better way of going about it would be like, instead of saying, oh, look at the bums off to the side or anything like that. Like, I mean, there's homeless families out there too. I don't think they're all on a bender or anything like that. So I don't know, I just think it would be more important to look at it as an instance of us coming together as a community and fixing it in-house instead of putting it off to the side, and who knows what happens there. Maybe they get shipped down to Ogden. I don't know. Like, limiting it out the gate seems pretty awful, especially when there's plenty of people out there with land that they're holding on to for 10 plus years, who knows, and don't know what to do with it, or seem like they don't know what to do with it. But I don't know, it just seems like that's something that we should take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Make sure you sign in at the
Your comment.
outside of the door, just
Yeah,
so that we have your name. Thank you.
Beth Smith, I'm the director of Bear River Mental Health, and I want you to know I practiced my speed talking for a whole hour today because I thought you were serious about the 3 minutes. So I have this down to 3 minutes, but I won't talk as fast. First, I want to thank you for what you do. I know that your job is hard, especially for Amy and her graciousness in the line of fire last night. The last time I was here in support of the fire station because there were neighbors who were all up in arms about the location. And I think my comment was, I know how it feels in the light, to be seen in the light of not in my backyard. It's not easy when people say that they don't need your service, but when they do, you can't get there fast enough. In a recent visit with planning and zoning and a review of the minutes, it put me here. And this time, it's not the fire station, it's me and it's Jordan with the health department as your community partners. It's not a neighborhood putting up or neighbors putting up barriers. It feels like there are barriers being put up by Logan City. You know, age is kind of a problem for me these days, but I figure what the heck. 40 years ago when I was hired, we were way out west, and that was because of the stigma surrounding mental health. Relocating downtown was a public event. There were news articles, there were radio spots on it, and it was actually Tom Jensen's firm who designed our building. It was so exciting to be moving downtown Logan. And we were thrilled to be right in the middle of taking care of mental wellness and getting it off the back roads. We'll serve over 5,000 people this year. When we moved to Logan City, we were serving about 350. Over the years, it has grown. I would ask you as a community partner, how are we doing? Are we causing problems for you? I feel like we're doing good. I don't hear that we're causing problems. This receiving center that's being included in this definition based on a single police office in Farmington, there are several others that need to be brought in on the information, is the research of the Utah Behavioral Health Crisis Commission. It is the resolve of the legislature and the governor's office. They picked us, they funded us. It's part of an evidence-based continuum of crisis response that provides the right service at the right time, in the right location, by trained professionals. It's equivalent to an Instacare for physical health, but it's behavioral. There needs to be parity there. We seek an understanding around stigma, and we seek an understanding around the quest for parity. This service supports local law enforcement, but it's only 35% of the clients that come. There's a satisfaction survey where they surveyed 337 police officers, and that resulted in 93% of them ranking it at a 10 on a 10-point scale. The other 7% ranked it at 8 or a 9. Drop-off times for us are 5 minutes or less in 78% of the cases, which free our officers to do the things that they need to do. I've provided a reference for you for some other officers to contact. I hope you do that. The other 75% of the individuals served are like you and me, who are self-referred, brought in by family or friends or others, and they've been going to the emergency room at the hospital or nowhere. Logan Regional Hospital, by the way, is highly supportive of this service and is making a donation to us as we move to try and make this service happen. It's not a lockdown facility, and the staffing is medical and behavioral. We want to meet with each of you. We really do. We want to teach you about what a receiving center really is. But right now, we'd like to request that the Behavioral Health Receiving Center be removed from this proposal. It doesn't belong there. It belongs elsewhere. And again, thanks to Amy for her guidance and to you members for your consideration.
Jordan Mathis with the Bear River Health Department. We have just concluded our community health needs assessment for our 3 counties. And the number one priority in that community health needs assessment is mental health and access to mental health. And my concern with the policy is whether or not the policy creates unintended consequences for making that access harder than it needs to be. It's already hard in our communities for individuals that need it. The other thing that I want to bring up is the fact that none of us are immune from an acute mental health crisis. You may not suffer from chronic mental health, but none of us are immune from an acute mental health crisis. None of us in this room. And so applying a stigma around mental health to a population is hard, because we need to put this together so it can serve me, you, your family, your friends, your neighbor, anyone. And we need to figure out how to do it right. And that's why I would ask that we hold off, because we do have this one-time funding to put this plan together for a receiving center that will serve our 3 counties. It's most likely going to land in Logan. We understand that because it's the biggest population. But we need to figure out how to do it right, and so that it provides the access that it needs for everyone, not just individuals with chronic mental health issues, any of us who may be suffering from an acute mental health issue. And so I just ask that we hold off and try to figure out how do we do it, and do it the best way possible. Because currently, right now, according to what we've gathered from stakeholders in our data, mental health is the greatest need that we have in our community. So thank you.
Could I ask you a question? Would that be okay?
You can ask them a question.
So as the ordinance is written, what exactly is your concern about what is written?
My greatest concern is the 300 feet, particularly from residential.
Okay, well, I agree with you. I think that was.
It provides a lot of restriction on where this could potentially be, and we got to think about where does it need to be? How can we best do it? And if we put a policy in place that restricts that, we tie the hands of what we're doing. I'm not opposed, obviously, to a public process where we get the input, but we also did a public process in our community health needs assessment that says we have a need for it. And trying to figure it out isn't easy. I'm not saying I have the answer. It's not an easy process. We knew going into this, as we talked, we knew that we would face people that didn't want this. But the reality is we didn't need to do a better job in our community educating people that it's not just chronically ill, addicted individuals coming here. It's for you and for me. If anyone in our family, God forbid, faces a mental health crisis, we have that resource where we can take somebody to. They can get the resources that they need and the help that they need.
Would you or Beth be able to maybe just give a quick and dirty on like what?
Beth would be glad to.
How a receiving center would function and operate? I think that would be helpful.
So we wanted to meet with each of you in order to do
You've got to
that.
come up to the microphone, sorry.
But just, maybe just like a quick, like, the process that, is it suicidal individuals? Is it?
You practiced
No.
for 3
So
minutes.
if you could just,
I don't want to give you more than 3 minutes.
No, it's not, it's not even just for suicidal individuals. It's a voluntary program, as I indicated, for individuals experiencing a mental health crisis. Now, sometimes that results in suicide ideation, but sometimes it doesn't. I was having my own crisis about what's going on here. I'm joking. But anyway, I'm kind of joking, but individuals right now, I wish I would have invited Brandon from Logan Regional Hospital. They're being inundated at the emergency room with
I'm
the
sorry,
types-
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Does this move?
It doesn't move, just need to talk louder.
I'm short. They're being inundated by assessments for mental health. And that's why they're interested in giving us a donation with this, because they're trying to free up the emergency room for individuals to receive physical health services that are emergent by physicians. This service provides behavioral health emergent services for both substance use and mental health. And again, we've heard people think that it is the indigent, and it might be, but it's not only the indigent. It serves everyone. It gives someone a place to go and get medical help, prescriptive help, nurse assistance. There's a full-time therapist who's there 24/7 or available 24/7, case management services. The center's mobile crisis outreach team will work out of this facility. It's just a strong location for response to behavioral health issues.
And the goal is that it's a 23-hour.
Yes, stabilization services. You know, I want to gather some data, but I only had 3 minutes of the average amount of time that people actually stay there. They're not 23 hours. They're not all 23 hours. If they're not stabilized, we have a residential facility that, quite frankly, I think would scare you more than this receiving center. It exists on 10th North, and you know, sometimes we have to call Logan City Police, but for the most part, it's pretty benign. So individuals that need stabilization would go to our residential facility for longer-term stabilization, or they would go to the hospital if we can't stabilize them. So it's just that step in between going to jail or going to the behavioral health unit, which both are more expensive services, if you can believe that. And the money, I wanted to clarify, is not one-time money. The money for the facility is one-time funding, but the money to fund the staffing required for this is ongoing from the state of Utah.
Thanks, Bob.
Other
Were
questions?
there medical staff?
Yes,
Medicals?
yes, nurses, prescribers, whether that's a doctor or an APRN. On site, they have to be available 24/7.
Okay, thank you.
And again, people are released back to where they came from. We don't just open the door and they walk out. You know, and I want to address his Brad, my friend. I love waving at him every morning. I love watching his building being built. He was concerned about, you know, Farmington being called to transport people in the ambulance to the hospital. And my counterpart down at Davis had indicated that initially when they first started, that was an issue, and they were able to resolve that problem and bring the number down. I'm not the kind of person that doesn't want to be fair. You know, I feel like we can work things out when we have problems. So whatever Farmington is saying about us, other police offices are not saying that. And let's work together and solve those issues.
So do you have any issue with the ordinance as proposed other than the 300 feet?
So let me tell you what happened, if I can take the time.
That's fine, I asked you the question.
We found
Jeannie
some
took over
properties.
as chairman, and so it's.
I told me I could ask you a question this time, I just did and I'd do it again.
Yeah.
Mental health crisis.
Yeah. So we found some property and we decided, well, let's get in touch with an architect because the funding is gonna hit July 1st and we wanted to hit the road running. When we called the architect, we said, let's look at the zoning stuff together. And you know, he said, well, it looks to me like, based on the fact that you're nonprofit, this is a community service, and by conditional use, you probably can get this property. So we came and visited with our friends at Planning and Zoning, and they didn't even care where what the property was. They said, stop, this is what you have to do. And it felt very much like barriers were being added because of who it is and what it is. Because it's harder now with this definition. And as indicated, based on what they heard from Farmington, without listening to the people who are trying to do it. So we would like to meet with each of you and share with you more information about receiving centers, if you would be willing.
Does anyone else have questions for that?
Not at the moment.
Thank you, Beth.
Anybody else? Oh, we got another one.
Brock Alder, Director of Behavioral Health Services at the Health Department. Jordan's my boss. Just wanted to say that I've been working here for 32 years. One of the biggest problems we don't have in our catchment area, we don't have any residential facilities, we don't have sober living facilities. The only thing we've got, as Beth said, is hospitalization or the jail. And I see this as a real opportunity to serve and cut down a lot of costs that happen at the hospital or end at the jail at a receiving center, and I think it just makes sense to have it more locally located than maybe out to the other side of the county. So I'll just say that and amen to what's already been said.
Nice job.
Any other public comment before we bring it back to the council? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for action.
I have the same concern that you do, Jeannie, about the same limitations as the alcohol, so. But Matthew brought up a really good point, so.
Related to everything or related specifically to?
Just in general, it's like, it seems kind of definitely limiting as well too. I'd really like to explore those locations. I do like the idea of it being a public zone and that public comment. I think that's a great idea, but I can see how it can be limiting. I think we can probably explore some different ways to make it so it's not quite so limiting. So I'd be willing to explore other options and maybe continue.
Well, the challenge that I'm gonna, and I'm not speaking opposed to, I'm talking about just the whole, like if you say, we don't care, that industry can go anywhere as long as they get a rezone for it. It allows the opportunity for the public to say yes or no. And is it better for that opportunity to be there or for us to take, to somehow, as you said, make it less onerous or whatever? I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm just putting that out there. So.
Because in some cases, it could make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
And in other cases, it could make it more difficult.
Correct.
That's what I'm seeing as well too. It's like, all right.
And is that public process appropriate?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nobody likes to let the public tell them what to do.
But ultimately it is planning and zoning and council.
It
that
is.
Ultimately,
It is,
it's the input of the citizenry.
Well, right, it is the input of the citizenry, and we need that input on everything. We need it on every rezone. So.
Tom, questions, comments?
Yeah, well, I just wrote down 2 comments. One is that I don't understand this very well. I think there's a lot of code things that Mike has done that's in one box, and then we're dealing with this receiving center and the homeless issues, which is kind of another basket, and I'm wondering if we could divide it. And I received 3 phone calls with concerns about it and basically asking that we give more time to study it. So that would be my inclination, is to, if we can pass everything but the receiving zone or this thing, or just hold off on this for a couple weeks or so. That's what I would say, because I'm in a fog. I read the whole thing, but I don't understand. I mean, there was a lot of good things brought up, but I'm still realizing this is an important thing, and I'd like a little more time.
Was that a motion?
I'm okay.
Okay, it's a motion.
To do what?
To do what, though? Is it to defer it for 30
continue.
days? To continue
Yeah, let's
for 30
continue it for
days?
30 days. That's a reasonable time. Yeah,
That would give us more time to visit with the health department
Yeah.
and
yeah, I would move
Planning.
that, whatever this is moved to 30 days. What is that?
2310.
2310.
2310.
Holly, you had a comment?
Can I just, again, when we heard that there was funding for the receiving center, I think we're supportive of the concept. We know there will be things that have to be worked out, but we've pledged to do that. So I don't think it was our intent to make it more difficult. We wanted to come up with some sort of a process, and so maybe what we came up with is not the right way to go. But our intent was not to derail a receiving center. So certainly I think some more time to look at it, or removing receiving center is a good way to go. And again, we can continue to meet and maybe discuss, but we thought we were trying to get prepared for a receiving center, but I think it turns out, you know, it became more restrictive than we'd anticipated.
Because our code did not address that at all.
Yeah.
And so basically, the way the code was written, there was nowhere that it could really be.
Depending on how one determined what a community service is.
Right. And so I think that the intention of creating this was the right intention. The outcome may have
Bit different.
been more restrictive than we would want it to be in the long run. And so I would be supportive of waiting for 30 days to work on that. I definitely don't believe that should we decide that there's a 300-foot circle, it would include residential housing. I know.
So is that a second to Tom's motion?
Yes.
Need to go date specific, so is it May 16th?
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would like us to discuss though is what is hoped to be accomplished in that 30
Right.
days? Like, is it, like, what are you all thinking? What additional information is needed, or what meetings, what needs to happen?
So
in
Tom's fog can get cleared,
that? So Tom's fog.
number one.
That might take
Yeah.
years, but, no, I think that's good. Thank you, Jeannie.
But I mean, specifically,
Yeah,
what
specifically, what are we shooting for?
in 30 days, are we just gonna come back and have the same
I'd like
discussion, or?
I'd like to explore those limitations that we implemented closer, the 300 feet.
The
and
proximity
the proximity
limitations.
limitations. I'd like to look at that some more. And I'm kind of with Jeannie. It's like, all right, does the public use zone make it easier or more difficult? You know, how can we maybe facilitate
The
that?
public
So,
zone.
yeah, I think it's not a bad idea. It kind of opens up for more opportunities, but it's going to be up to us to rezone it. So I'd like to look at that some more too.
And by looking at that, meaning with your own initiative, like, I just want to clarify, like, over the next 30 days.
She wants to give us homework.
I want to give you all homework. I used to be a
I
substitute
don't need
teacher.
it.
No, I just want to make sure, like, do we want to have a workshop again in 2 weeks that's open to the public, where we discuss this and we bring in people that we feel can help weigh in on it? Do we want to, like, what?
I do not like crafting ordinances in a public meeting.
Okay.
I think that's very difficult to do.
That either.
I do, I would appreciate, and why I asked the questions that I asked was, what parts of this are troubling
Okay.
to individuals? And I would like people to let me know, or let us know, what parts of this are troubling to them.
So when you say people, you mean
And anybody.
organizations,
Troubling or
public?
I mean, anybody.
I mean, Beth's offered to meet with us
Right.
and
Yeah.
help
And I
us, you know.
And then if
And
we,
again, I guess I might request on the other side, as you're discussing sites, I mean, maybe bring a representative from the council in on those meetings, because I think one thing that happens, we keep hearing, well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, and, we feel like, it's like maybe there should be some input
And
from our.
I would also appreciate knowing, we heard that it's very difficult and it's a very thoughtful process that they are going through. But I don't know what that process is, and I don't know what things are important for the decision.
The
So-
location decision or the?
The location decision. Because I think that, there could be, there could be places that I might be able to suggest just because, or you might be able to suggest, or Mark might be able to suggest, because of what we do within the community that they may not have considered. But if I don't know what it is they're looking for, that would be something that I would like to figure out in the next 30 days.
Okay.
And that might be a meeting with you all,
and then we go back with community development and kind of just
Well,
rework things a little bit.
yeah.
I think the goal should be of this process is that if and when they do decide they find a location, want to place it there, that we all are not caught off guard by 500 people in this room or in PC yelling about, why didn't we know about it? And granted, they've done survey work, but really nobody knows about it until you see a stake in the ground.
Right.
And they start asking questions about what's it going next door to me. And there is a lot of stigma attached to these things, and people don't understand, and part of us are ignorant about what they do or don't do. And so that's what we're trying to avoid, is that
Right.
train wreck happening.
So there's, obviously, then it's like, what role do we have in the education too, though, then of our community, and what the importance of these types of services? And I think a lot of that comes from all of us understanding exactly what a receiving center does, what it provides, or even to Gail's question of, what does a homeless resource center provide? And that was a broad list of activities that you added up to.
But that is the definition.
Right,
That
so-
we've,
right.
that we've created. That's a new definition.
Right.
Mind you.
Right.
So is that an adequate definition, or is it too broad, or is it too wordy?
Yeah. Okay, does that, everyone feel, does that help to understand what we're hoping to achieve over the next period of time?
30 days.
Does that help you all understand what information might be helpful? Okay. All right.
So do we have to vote on it?
Yes, we did vote on it. So we have a motion and a second, so.
Are you gonna, and you're gonna continue the public hearing, or?
Your decision.
I know, gosh, I have so much power at this moment. It's scary.
Well, think about whether we make changes to it. Would it be valuable
To
to
have
have
a
additional
public hearing.
public
Yeah,
hearing?
I think
I
that,
think it probably, yes, with the public hearing.
I
And if
think-
Ernesto doesn't like that, he should have been here.
it's my motion, so I get the power to say it.
All right, any other discussion?
No.
All right, so,
All those in favor?
all those in favor of the motion to
Continue.
continue ordinance 23-10 to May
16.
2nd.
Jean, to May, is it the 16th, to May 16th? All those in favor say aye.
All right.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries.
Continue.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. He gets to come, oh no, Russ gets to do this one. Woo-hoo.
All right, so our last public hearing is a rezone, a consideration for proposed rezone at 1360 North, 200 West. This is ordinance 23-11. Welcome to the hot seat, Russ.
Hi, thank you. Which chair do I address here? This is the Willits rezone. So the Rural Point subdivision is located on 1400 North and 2nd West. This area was developed in the early 90s, and it was developed as multifamily housing. This particular lot is the far east lot, and it's 1.8 acres. 7 fourplexes were built in the 90s, and then the area was divided at the county illegally. So there was an illegal subdivision, and then in 2000, and then again in 2007, the area was down zoned. So this is in the Bridger neighborhood. As we did some planning, some outreach in early 2000s and again in 2007, we did some coordinating with the elementary school over there. There was a lot of feedback that said, hey, we need to pump the brakes on multifamily development over here. The school didn't have a lot of stability. And so the city council's downzoned this area a couple of times. Right now it's zoned MR12. It was built to, it was R4 in the 90s, which originally would have allowed 8 fourplexes on this, but it was never built. 8 fourplexes.
Was R4?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Because our
It was
NR4
about-
is a lot less than that.
Yeah, I mean, it was about 16 or 17 units per acre, give or take, and now it's down to 12 units per acre.
How much of this was developed when it was downzoned?
All of it,
Downzoned.
all of it.
It was like all.
It was
already.
already, yep. And so
this area, like a lot of the areas in the Bridger neighborhood, is considered legally existing non-conforming. Okay, so it's grandfathered in. Jed Willits came to the city in 2011-ish, 12, and he had purchased one of these illegal portions that they divided off. So there was this kind of leftover area. It's a 1/4 acre, but it was never recognized as a building lot. He received some misinformation. He assumed he had a 1/4 acre and it was zoned MR12. So he thought, hey, I can build a duplex here. So we went through the process of rezoning in 2016. The city council at the time did upzone it, and he received a design review permit or an entitlement, and then the city downzoned it. There was another property, it was called Mountain Land. It went bankrupt. There was 2 upzones, and then they subsequently downzoned. Basically, it was done to allow this to develop and then not to allow anything else, okay? So that's the downzone. Jed went through there was some family and kind of some personal issues associated with COVID and some car accidents, and he got his building permit in 2016, but he never built it. And Paul Taylor officially expired that building permit in 2020, and the window closed and his opportunity to build vanished, okay? Jed came back a few months ago and reapplied for a rezone to try this again. He met with Planning Commission in March, and on the 21st, Planning Commission did recommend approval. They did vote 3-2, but they did vote to recommend upzoning. When Jed came back, he was thinking, hey, maybe I'll do a 4-plex, because if I get upzoned to 20, Planning Commission, he put himself on record saying, I just want to do a duplex, I just want to go back to what I was originally thought I could do. And I think that swayed the Planning Commission's vote as well. But that's the project in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions.
But it's just a verbal commitment to keep it as a duplex.
Yes.
There's no legal, that's not legally binding.
There is not a deed restrictive, or nor can there be any kind of conditional rezone for this.
Yeah, it's all up to him.
Now, actually, there is a little bit more than that, because they did approve the design review permit for a duplex.
Okay, that's already
And
approved.
if he wanted to try to come back with anything else, he would have to get a new design review permit,
Okay.
go back to, so there is that.
Okay.
But if it's rezoned, he could.
When the window's open, it's open.
Yeah. So my question is, adding this to this already quite tight plot, does that affect fire access? Does that affect garbage access? Does that affect any services access to the property?
And the design review permit did address some of those things. He will have to comply with current regulations. I know stormwater has changed a little bit, and so there's some stormwater regs that he's gonna have to follow. Garbage, looked into it, and they can make the necessary modifications.
Okay.
And then fire, I believe, has no access issue.
He has access on 2 streets.
Only one, actually. So this driveway does not connect here.
Oh, really?
But it's here.
Oh, there's a sidewalk.
Fire truck could drive
All
over.
right.
But there's enough room that it's a turnaround right here, so fire.
And what is our regulation now with respect to how many units require more than one access point? Is it up to 20, it's up to 20 now, right?
Yeah.
And this would be 16.
Well, no, we're zoning at MR20.
That means,
But there- but
if
there's-
he
but there's
does
only
duplexes,
16.
it would be 16.
Yeah, so it's still be underneath that.
And does he have enough open space to build?
That's another condition of the design review, that he provide landscaping and open space. I failed to mention, there were a couple neighbors at the planning commission meeting. The neighbor directly to the south was concerned about some stormwater and some runoff, and that was addressed in the design review permit as well.
Any other questions for Russ before we open the public hearing?
Seems like we've seen this thing a couple times.
All right.
Something similar.
I will open up the public hearing for ordinance 23-11. If you'd like to make comment, please come up to the mic and state your name.
Jed Willits, I appreciate you guys taking the time to look at this. I started writing, I only made it to the first one, the packet I was going to give you, but I, Jed Willits, will commit to a duplex only. I will write this on the back of every one of these, so I'll put it in, I'll put it in verbiage in writing. So,
Another republic here somewhere.
That's an interesting deed restriction. I've never seen this.
So I just wanted to go through this quick. This is my lot right here, this front page. Sorry, I don't have anything where everybody can see it, but the use of this lot, it holds the dumpsters quite well. I love paying the tax to have everybody's dumpsters on my lot, but it is useful. It's a great spot in the wintertime, the second page, to collect snow. It's a good spot, and that's kind of deems why there's probably more water that ends up here in the spring and that, because this eventually melts, but it usually just kind of keeps going from where it's stacked and piled. So that's number two. Let's go through these quick. This is an email. It was a few years in the process of back when I spent about $3,000 on a survey trying to get this whole 1.8 acres surveyed, and then every lot owner would have to sign on that. I had one lot owner from California that was going to come up the next year, and they'd look at it then. So there was a lot in that few years that just things didn't line up. So this email I got November 26, 2019. It was referenced before that I had a building permit in 2016. But this says the first line, Logan City has approved plans for a duplex. The permit will expire May 22nd, 2020. So that 6-month time, it did expire. I work at UPS in the morning. I have twins with cerebral palsy. Been there about 20 years. And that's my little 3 to 11 in the morning job. I go to Salt Lake and back and bring all the air back. We got really busy. February, March, when COVID really hit, seems like everybody that didn't know how to point and click and I want this on my doorstep figured it out. So my 8 to 9 hours went to 12 to 14 hours probably that whole year. The first 2 years of vaccines, I was the one that delivered those to Walmart and Sam's Club and Bear River Health Department. Next page really quick, just focused on, it is the biggest lot out of all these 6 lots. It's a good, probably 25% larger. So it seems like, well, it's already got 7 units, but it is in comparison. So I just want to point that out. The taxes I pay on it, the next page, 96, it's based on $96,000 value. That first page, and if you flip over, these are just 3 of the other 4-plex units, but their base in orange there is $96,250. The next one's $96,250. The next one $96,250. So I've basically been paying taxes like it's a 4-plex lot for a long time. Just saying that. I'm talking about a duplex, not a 4-plex. Once again. Anyway, that's just in a nutshell. A couple of things I wanted to point out in the general plan, it calls this area as mixed residential, and this is on this page in that little packet. But in that, it calls out it's mixed residential. It does not distinguish between medium and high, which 12 is medium, 20 is high. In Chapter 5, growth versus land availability, it states that the problem being that the per capita land consumption is increasing while available quality developable land is decreasing. The solutions identified are compact growth, infill, and redevelopment. So those first two things, compact growth and infill, this is just kind of a lost little lot. So it's infill, it's compact growth, it's kind of, it would give this lot a purpose other than a nice place to collect stuff. And it does have 11 parking stalls. So if you see that sidewalk that runs east and west, about 2/3 of the way up the red box, there's 11 line parking stalls that have been there ever since this whole development was put in. So there's ample parking, and
How much of that parking is on your property?
11 of the stalls. Yep, the whole thing is. Yeah, from that red line over the other red line, east to west, there's 11 there. Yep. And I think that's it. I just, I would love if life was, I guess, simpler, and I would have just been able to tackle this back in 2020. Wish I would have thought more about, maybe got an extension on that. I did appreciate the city Russ, they were great as far as where they did upzone this just for a little bit so I could do this before, and then it went back. I feel bad because that's a waste of time and energy for everyone, but can't go back and we're at the point we're at. So I think that's about it. Any questions I can answer?
If we do approve this, will you promise to do it?
My plan is this year. Yeah, that's the, I'm not planning to delay.
You're a nice guy, but we don't want to see you.
I don't want to be here for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else from the public like to comment on this? All right, seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council for action. More comments or thoughts?
I'll move approval on ordinance 2311. We've gone through this a couple times, and it's not like a whole new development. It's a lost, as he said, it's a lost parcel.
Do we want to downzone it again afterwards?
That's a good idea.
That would be nice.
Because I really feel like the reason that the downzone happened was because a lot of these properties are aging. And as they redevelop, I think that the neighborhood was very concerned that it would go more dense. And they would prefer it to not be quite so dense.
So that the rezone is just for that parcel, it's not for the other surrounding.
Well, since it's an illegal,
Or how does that work?
Since it's an illegal subdivision, it's the whole
It's
parcel.
the whole parcel,
the dark brown is what we
the
recognize
whole
right
parcel.
here.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
I could file a down zone in the morning, which would restrict any, sale or someone else trying to come in and build a fourplex or something more.
Okay,
That's good.
yeah. I would second.
So I don't know what the emotion is.
It was just the motion to approve was
Yeah,
from
motion to
Bob.
approve.
But
I
with-
agree.
With the,
With the amendment to downzone it, is that what we're?
I don't know, that's what I'm asking.
I will amend my
Approval.
Do you want to withdraw your second?
to have the
I'll
down
wait.
zone as Russ had
Yeah.
indicated.
Okay,
Following approval.
Okay, then I'll second.
okay. Any other
I just want,
comments, questions?
no, I just want to see something there instead of an empty lot, so
Well,
I like this.
I worry about where the snow's gonna go, but,
yeah, well,
and the garbage.
there's not gonna be this much snow next year.
Snow's
Yes,
melting.
there is.
Right.
We're on a roll.
Any other comments or
Melted.
discussion on this? All right, and All those in favor of ordinance 23-11 as amended?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay. Ordinance 23-11 passes as amended. All right, we will move on to our workshop items. We're only a half an hour late.
I don't think you should be chair again. We're already a half an hour behind
That's
schedule.
that's the minutes. I'm really
That's
upset.
totally up to
I
the
won't
chair,
second
so.
Lisa, you do not look like Madeline.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's like,
You should, come on. We're always happy to see you.
Thank you. The survey report you have in front of you, the Municipal Wastewater Planning and Programming Annual Report, is a report we present to you every year. And it gives you an opportunity to see the assessment of the wastewater program, which includes the collection system currently managed by Public Works, the treatment discharge to lagoons. We're still reporting the lagoons because the wastewater treatment plant is in the conditioning stage, so it will not cover this report. And then the financial evaluation of the two systems together, the collection system and also the treatment discharge lagoons. Every year we present these to you simply because we are required to provide these to the state so that they know also the condition of the system as well. The report is very simple. It does ask some simple questions and seeks an answer to provide you a complete report of the system itself, and also give the state additional information other than what we give them in regular basis as it relates to water quality and things like that. So in the collection section, one of the questions is what is the largest size of the diameter of the pipe you have in the sewer system? 60 inches. Questions like that, and it was installed in 2015. Average depth of the collection system is 10 feet and 85 inches, at 10.85 feet below ground. The question that was surprising to me is the total length of the sewer collection system in Logan, 162 miles.
wow.
Yes.
That's
like going to St. George.
That's like the whole system,
Yeah.
even into Nibley and for all.
No, just Logan.
This is just Logan.
Yes.
Okay.
And just so you know, I just approved a variance for night work for sewer cleaning and maintenance. They typically do this every spring. It's a little, especially when it's on UDOT roads, they require us to do it at night. So if you get comments from citizens that you see city trucks out working late, yes, they are working in the middle of the night to provide less impact to traffic, and there will be some noise to residences, but it will be temporary.
So these questions were designed to flush out any concerns or, to give you enough information so that you understand the condition of the system. Last year, there was 18 more commercial and industrial facilities, mainly commercial, and 95 residential units connected into the system. Number of employees, this is just a collection system. There are 6 employees dedicated for sewer collection, and the population is about 54,000 Logan currently served by the sewer collection system. Overall, the collection system condition is fair. Planning to update the capital facility plan also in the next few years. That is in general the collection system. As it relates to the lagoons, the percent capacity currently used for the lagoons is 80%. In terms of flow,
because we're also diverting some flow to the wastewater treatment, the newly built one. BOD, biochemical oxygen demand is 4% we're using. And overall load rate is about 81% is what we're operating under the lagoons right now. Number of notice of violations we received, 0. Number of bypasses where sewer is not treated, we dumped it into the river, it happens. Not in Logan, 0. Year evaluated, constructed, the headworks. This year, 2022 is the year we've improved the part of the lagoons because it is the headworks section that connects to the new wastewater treatment plant also. But the last time the lagoons were updated was 1988. Number of employees of the treatment system is 8. We have
amazing.
8 employees.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we have a facility maintenance plan also, and we're also trying to put together a new master plan. How we're going to continue to maintain this facility and also add on. That is one thing wastewater treatment is commonly is done. You add on and maintain. So the next section, summary, the financial evaluation of the system. It asks if we have a dedicated maintenance fund. Yes, we do. We set aside about $1 million a year for that. Are you collecting 95% of the anticipated revenue? Yes. Are debt services required met? Yes. What is the annual average user charge? Is $279. That's about $23.30 or so per month. Do you have customer assistance program? Yes. Are property tax applied to sewer system? No, because we have enterprise fund that we use only that fund to build new systems and also maintain existing systems. Capital improvement fund, we're planning to have is 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years. The next 3 years, 3 to 4 years, we intend to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant so quickly. We have received $5 million from the federal government, and we intend to add another $7 million from Logan City Preserves to add bioreactor 4. That will increase our capacity to 24 million gallons a day. We have impact fee that is approximately, exactly $2,483 per residential unit. Overall, this is the summary of the report you have in front of you. Any question?
I'm just impressed that it's working exactly the way, I'm super impressed that it's working exactly the way you planned it to work.
Sometimes.
Things go right.
I was thinking, I'm looking at this largest diameter pipe at 60 inches. I'm like, dang, I could almost stand in that.
You could walk down the middle.
Almost.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit taller than that, but not much.
Did you say 24 million gallons a day?
When they have
When
it.
we add reactor
Yes.
4? Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's crazy.
Well, I'm just grateful. I'll say I'm grateful. I listened to someone tell me that a lot of the drainage fields in Franklin are backing up into people's houses because because it's so wet that we have a sewage treatment facility. We don't have to worry about that anyway. So do you anticipate that you will get a lot of stormwater? Or are you going to use the lagoons for stormwater storage?
Infiltration, you mean, during the flooding? If there is a flooding, yes. We haven't seen significant increase but we have seen some increase.
Okay,
2017, we topped our pipe.
the 60-inch pipe?
The flow meter stopped reading flow when it was 52 million gallons coming in a day.
Oh, wow.
And we don't know how much more we received that day. So far, the flow we've seen is the highest 24 million gallons a day.
Okay, and we can handle that right now?
Yes, because we have two options. We can still run to the lagoons that is capable of receiving about, like the 50 million gallon we received in 2017. And on top of that, we have the wastewater treatment plant currently running about 10.5 million gallons a day.
Okay,
So
okay.
we're capable of handling. But if there is a disaster, you never know.
Well, I know,
It won't be a disaster unless it causes damage.
yeah. But I'm glad we still are able to use the lagoons for extra stormwater.
Exploitation, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Isa?
No, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Madeline, Isa. All right, our next workshop item is consideration of a resolution amending the fire prevention inspection fees. Welcome, Chief Haynes.
So, Mayor and Council, these actually are new fees. Historically, we have not charged inspection fees. Just to give you a little context, unlike the building department, which usually goes in and does inspections, we are usually part of that new construction, a plan review process, as well as we continue to do those building inspections until they're no longer a business in the city of Logan. So that is in perpetuity, year after year, we're gonna continue to do those things. And so, as we've grown, we've looked at these several different times. We've done a few studies over the past couple of years to look at all of the potential other cities. We reviewed, I think, six other cities' fees to see what they were charging, like cities in Utah, just to kind of get an idea. We also looked at the numbers as far as what the actual cost and time for our employees, and within that 10% parameter for the fees that we're requesting. So, there are a lot of other fees that cities charge that we won't. We looked at ones that were impactful to the workload. We have had the same two inspectors since 1995. So imagine the workload difference from there to now. We did get one additional person with the consolidation of North Logan, but we also acquired all their building inspections as well. We do about 1,500 business inspections, roughly another 400 new business, and another 300 new construction, food trucks, and so on, all year long. We are this year proposing in our new budget to have an administrative person that can help manage some of that workload, so that they can spend more time actually doing inspections rather than doing a lot of paperwork, phone calls, and such. So a clerical person will help manage some of that workload, but we know we need to institute fees in order to prepare for the future so that there's less impact on the general fund for the services that we're providing as inspection.
So is this similar to what we talked about with Paul's, that the fees would help to offset the cost of that?
Absolutely.
In the budget.
Right,
we'll
so
see that in the budget.
we're gonna enact, we wanna enact the fees right away, and then we'll look at next year, not this coming budget year, but hopefully by the next year, we can have a good view of what those collected fees could be to help offset employee costs for the future.
So you do new construction without fire sprinklers or fire alarm, $75 for the general plan review, which you do now,
Right.
and another $75 for an inspection?
So we have to do we do a general plan review, and then we do a final inspection on those buildings. If they have a fire sprinkler alarm system, you can see the list of things that we have to do. Now, to give you an example of why we're adding the additional site inspections as needed down below, is currently, I'll just give you one example. We have a property right now that should have 3 plan review for that site, and an additional 3 inspections during the tenure of its construction. We are more than likely going to do 13 inspections if they pass every single one that they've asked for. So right now, a business can ask for whenever they want, and they can fail, and then we got to come back again. So that we come at demand. The challenge for that is, how do we manage it? Having a fee structure that says you're going to pay for those additional ones, we'll either curb that, the unnecessary ones or the unprepared ones, or we'll get compensated for that extra time. And so it's kind of twofold, right? One to prevent and one to hold accountable, because right now we have no mechanism to say no. They do their best to accommodate it based on request, and those tend to be, for some properties, multiple, sometimes 4 or 5 times what it should be. And so these are twofold, right? To compensate for the time and potentially maybe prevent some of the unnecessary ones as well.
So I can see doing it after the first one.
Right?
I just don't know, seems like a lot of fees to me.
I guess maybe I could have Craig weigh in on that, since this is his division.
I mean, it seems like a lot of fees to just pile on all at once.
So a lot of those come with a building that does not have a fire sprinkler or fire alarm. We're part of the plan review process for the whole building. And that's going to take us probably about a 2-hour plan review process. So that's the first fee. And then we're also part of the inspection process to go out and certify the building to give them their certificate of occupancy. So that's the second one. That's one without a fire sprinkler or fire alarm system. If they have a fire sprinkler or fire alarm system, they come in for the first building plan review. We're part of that plan review. Then they have what they call deferred submittals. Because they don't design the sprinkler alarm or the fire sprinkler system or the fire alarm system at the same time that they design the building. Those are designed later. So later on, I will get a whole set of plans on the fire alarm system, and I need to do a review on that. Then I get a whole other set of plans on the fire sprinkler system, and I do a review on that. Then I go out to the site and I do a rough install inspection on the fire alarm system. Then I go out on the site and I do a rough install inspection on the sprinkler system. And then at the end of construction, we do a final inspection where we make sure they all work and all work together. So that's why it's easily, a building that has a fire sprinkler and fire alarm system, we're doing 3 plan reviews and 3 site visits. But a lot of times what happens is they'll come out and say, well, we only have this section of the building ready, so I want you to come do just this section, and then just this section, and then just this section. And that's why sometimes we end up there 10 or 15 times on the site over the course of construction with no compensation back to us and no way to curb some of those, when really they should have the whole system installed, and we're going once.
So if they do say come do a partial, it would be 75 each time you went out.
Just a minimum fee.
I agree, and I understand what you're doing. Is this consistent with other cities our size?
Yes, very much so. Riverdale, they'll charge any time their inspector walks on the job site, they charge. And that's just the construction ones. There's other ones in this fee schedule C, daycares, food trucks, fireworks. There's a lot of types of inspections that we'll do throughout the year.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Koenig? Thank you.
Okay.
We know where to find you.
Yeah. You can reach him. He'll be out there in the hard hat watching the construction. Russ Holly, come on down for ordinance 2316 workshop.
Thank you. Sugar Creek, this is a rezone and subdivision request on behalf of Visionary Homes and Ben Steele. This is out in the Woodruff neighborhood, right off of 600 South and in between 10th West and 1400 West. You can see the site here. It's currently, I believe there's a couple of outbuildings, an older home used as agricultural. The future land use plan calls this entire area DR, which is detached single-family residential. The newly adopted Woodruff neighborhood plan calls this area to remain as DR, so that's this little turquoise box or blue box up there, that's the site. It's currently zoned NR4, so it was NR6 about 5 years ago. There was some down zoning in the city. Cliffside, Hillcrest, and this area were down zoned to NR4, which is still single family. It's just a bigger lot and fewer homes per acre. The request is to go to MR9. MR9 would allow for a variety of housing types, as well as a density of up to 9 units per acre. Overall, the site's about 35 acres. This is the plan that they've shown. So the brown boxes would be a townhome product attached, and then the tan area would be a smaller single-family lot, about 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, and then the yellow area would be a 6,000 square foot lot. This is kind of showing context to the area. The Woodruff is a newer neighborhood. Some of these areas at the south were developed in the early 2000s, but there's some older neighborhoods. Equestrian Estates is just north of here. That dates back to the late 80s. And then, of course, the city owns quite a bit of property to the northwest here. And the new park is planned about 2 blocks north of here as well. The subdivision included 3 phases. Basically, they want to kind of start in the middle with a mix of townhomes and lots, and then go back to the east, and then final in the west area on the red there. So the project went through, and overall the gross density is about 6 units per acre, just under 6, 5.8.
As proposed.
As you see right here. It's a little bit deceiving because there's quite a bit of wetlands on this property, and so to actually achieve maximum density would be very difficult regardless of the zone. But it's not developed to max density. A couple of benefits or nice things about this proposal that the applicant has taken into consideration is they've kind of placed the multifamily on the interior, so they've tried to maybe buffer some of the existing surrounding single family so that there's a little better transition. And then with the wetlands, it also gives you an opportunity to maybe create some bigger, more meaningful open space. And the MR9 zone actually requires open space and landscaping, whereas the NR4 or the NR6 don't. You obviously get a bigger lot, and so, you know, a lot of that landscaping is just someone's backyard. But the MR9 actually does require that open space, and so they've done a pretty good job of creating some well thought out open space areas. The Planning Commission heard this. We had quite a few folks from the neighborhood show up, and most were opposed. We had 2 or 3 that liked the idea, but the majority of the neighborhood didn't like the idea. Staff was concerned because obviously the FLUP calls it out as DR, and we like to be predictable when it comes to zoning. Folks that are thinking about investing in an area, they're gonna look at that future land use map or look at those zoning maps and hopefully kind of get a comfort level or at least try to predict what's coming. Obviously, it's hard to predict what's coming. But the bigger kicker for the staff was just this newly adopted Woodruff neighborhood plan. We spent months out there, more kind of grassroots effort, those neighborhood plans. We don't go into it with an agenda. We just try to listen to folks and see what they want to say and try to make recommendations. And that's what this plan shows. Again, this was just adopted a year or 2 years ago. And they wanted to make some changes to the highway entrance, where there's kind of the nodal areas around those new signals. They thought, okay, maybe that's a good place for some multifamily or some commercial kind of mixed use. They felt like these areas up here should stay single family detached. And so ultimately the Planning Commission decided to recommend denial. They voted 5-1. There were 6 members that night. And here we are. Any questions?
So the vote, though, also included a commentary about doing a deed restriction, correct? I thought I read that it suggested that a deed restriction could keep the density at a certain level, but that's not something that the Planning and Zoning Commission can do.
Neither is it something we can do.
Except a deed restriction?
We can accept one, but we can't create one.
Right.
Yeah, that topic was discussed in Planning Commission amongst some other ideas.
So, Ross,
Yes.
so you've got NR4 up top, the proposed MR9, you've got NR4 below it. What is the other spaces, county?
Yeah, so this area here is unincorporated county. So anything that doesn't have a color is outside of the city boundary, and this red line represents the city boundary.
Because that NRC to the left, that's property that was just recently annexed in, correct?
Yes, so, and this is also a Visionary Homes project that went through Planning Commission just a few months ago. That one's called River Gate, and that was developed or subdivided into 6,000 square foot single-family lots.
So is there any intellectual reason why it would be important to maintain the NR4 in a swath rather than chopping it up? Because it's almost like, okay, well, you rezone that piece and then the next piece above it, somebody wants to rezone because nothing's built on it right now. And does that, I mean, we rezoned some NR4 in the city so that we would have a variety of housing options. So does this philosophically make a change in that option, in that concept?
So when this area was selected as a candidate for the NR4, we did an analysis and inventory of the existing lot sizes. And these lots that are in NR4 are closer to that 10,000 square foot size, or quarter acre, if you will.
Right.
This area also included quite a bit of vacant land, and so that was also tacked in or lumped in, I guess, with the anticipation that you would have some kind of like housing products clustered together. But that was the reasoning.
Okay.
Did we hear from the school district at all on this one?
We did not. A lot of the neighbors commented on safety for kids trying to get to schools. You can see Woodruff Elementary is right here. There's quite a few folks that kind of go up and down this corridor. There's sidewalk on the south side of the road, but the north side of the road is undeveloped.
That would develop it, right?
It would, yeah,
Yes, it
and
would.
the applicant also is, and this was true for Rivergate to the west, you know, they've looked at some kind of wider, almost trail-like type of frontage along there, so, you know, the kids or joggers would have plenty of room to get up and down that road.
Well, plus the road will be widened, correct? 6 South?
Yeah, it's planned to be widened into a collector street, so.
102?
No, that's an arterial collector, it's 80 feet.
Oh.
Right now it's about 60, and so the plan is to go up to 80.
What about 1400 West, which isn't a street yet?
But yeah, the plan is to dedicate right-of-way in anticipation of that corridor.
Being what size?
That one's probably gonna be an arterial, the CMPO is still working on that alignment, kind of called the western bypass. But yeah, that one would be an arterial.
So that'd be big.
Yes. 102.
Okay.
So the roads connecting to the opposite side of the street, it's, there's the two exist and two don't exist, as I'm looking at 6 South, right?
Yep, so Planning Commission looked at kind of the grid pattern and connectivity, so there'd be a connection here at 1200 West. There would be a stub here at 1250. This would be a four-way intersection, that would be a four-way intersection. And then kind of internally, it kind of circulates and loops. There's not really an opportunity to make any other connections because of the wetlands and then kind of the backyards in this area.
Why would you make a connection so close to what's gonna be an arterial road? Why would
Right
you put-
here?
Yeah, why would you do that when you're gonna have an arterial road just west of that?
That's a good question.
Because, I mean, a four-way connection there would seem to be, I don't know.
But is that because they have to have a certain number of connections because of the size of the property?
No, they would meet that because they've got an excess of 3.
Jeannie, are you saying having that street from the arrow there go straight west to the 1400?
No, I'm just saying it seems silly to have an exit from the property there when you've got a big road just, you know, a quarter block away. And they can already exit out the top part to the big road, or they will be able to. They can halfway do it now.
From a traffic perspective.
From a traffic perspective.
And that it could interfere with the arterial.
That's all.
I may not understand this very well, but if the density net for the property, 35 acres, is 5.8, could you do it as 6? And as a property, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Right there next to it.
The answer is no because of 2 reasons. One is you can't have townhomes in NR6. They have to be separate single-family homes. And then their proposal, they have these tan lots between 4,000 and 5,000 square feet. NR6 is a 6,000 square feet minimum lot size. So even though they meet the density, they don't meet the lot size and they don't meet the housing type or structure type.
But the neighborhood that opposed this is probably opposing
The 9.
the 9,
And not the
which
6.
is somewhat fictitious because it's not 9 density, it's 5.8 density.
But, Tom,
And-
you have no guarantee that that project, exactly as it looks, is going to be built.
Well, I know, but we also always do, or frequently do deed restrictions, and that's my understanding is that that could be made for this thing so that
But we don't do them.
No, the owner does.
The owner has
I
to do
know
that.
that.
So,
And I guess the other question would be, at NR4, given all the wetlands, what would be the maximum true density that would be able to be accomplished there too? Because you stated that much of this area is not buildable, correct?
Yeah, I mean, once you take out the wetlands and some of the streets, you're probably around 3 units per acre.
If it was NR3.
if it was NR4, you're not gonna achieve maximum density no matter the zone because of the wetlands.
So
Which
this is,
doesn't help with housing availability.
Right, and that's the other-
NR4 is actually not really, it's really a lower density, so if we're thinking of NR4, there'll be that many houses, it really isn't gonna achieve the NR4 density as far as availability.
Yes, you're probably gonna have a higher price point or a higher price tag for NR4 product. This proposal will have a variety of price points, just given because of the size of the product, right?
it's kind of a mixed-use residential on a low scale.
Yes.
It's a PUD
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
It is.
that we don't have an ordinance.
So in a sense, we've done this before on that project north of here, where we borrowed density basically from land that couldn't be built on and applied it to the land that could be built on so that you create a net higher density. I can't remember the name of the project, but it was.
Yes, we've done mixed residential projects, we've done mixed use projects, yes.
The thing I like about this is that it's planned. Usually we see a rectangle that says NR6 and we don't know anything.
Build me.
And the thing I like about it is that there's some thought put into it about isolating or insulating the neighborhood with property that is like them. And the yellow properties, they're just like the people on the other side of the line. And the gray properties on the bottom are like the people down there in the sense that, so it's insulating them. And within the property, those people that want to live in a townhome, you know, this is quite nice in a sense that there's been thought put into it. Typically, a development like this is plastered with a grid of boxes. And this has a park-like attribute to it for children and people that want to walk to green space and whatever. And the connectivity is another thing that I like on this thing. It has the thoughtfulness that we don't see in a lot of other properties.
We don't often get to see the project along with the rezone request.
Well, that's right. That's right. And also the size of the property, 35 acres, is on the 1%. I mean, we don't get many properties of that size. So it allows them to do something creative. And I guess I'd like to take advantage of that rather than just plaster it with grid.
And I'm assuming since this developer sells, this is not typically rental property. It's not gonna be managed in any, like an apartment complex where it would be a managed product. Would be
No, I
like
think
gas.
that,
Is that
yeah, from what I understand, it'll be for sale product.
for sale product?
And it would be an HOA. I would
There has
say.
to be an HOA when you have a common area like this, yes.
Yeah.
How many units total?
Oh, shoot, hold on.
More than 200.
So it's 82 single-family homes and 126 townhomes for a total of 208
You were
total
really
units.
close. You're good. Something to think about.
Yep. Okay.
All right, any other questions for Russ on this one?
At the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Paul, you've been waiting a long time, but not as long as Rich.
Rich can't
Sorry.
just get up and leave either, so.
Or us.
I'm sorry.
Hello again.
Hello. Seems appropriate, 8:30 to talk about a vacation.
We should give an
Yes, a
award for
vacation.
Gail for
Because I'm
saying.
tired of Sprinter.
I'm here to talk to you about the potential vacation of a public utility easement. To give you references on Mount Logan Drive. So southeast part of the town up by Mount Logan Givens Park. This is a existing subdivision. Same owner of these two lots on both sides wants to do a smaller subdivision, basically to realign this property boundary. As you'll see in a later slide, moves that, then this utility easement that exists here would need to be vacated to make that a buildable or usable space without the burden of the easement.
So do we move the easement with it?
Yes, the new property would have easements on the side of it. So this is the smaller lot we just looked at. It's got a 5-foot PUE to be vacated. Another view of it. And this would be the new boundary line with a new public utility easement that would come in with the proposed subdivision. This is the old property line.
That's a weird property
And the
line.
utility easement that would be vacated with it. There are no existing utilities in that easement, and we have noticed, as required, we have received actually quite a few phone calls on this, probably the most I've heard of for a residential utility easement vacation. They were all just inquiries, nobody opposed to or necessarily just want to know what was going on. It's been posted on the property as required, and it will hit its time requirement prior to our action item in 2 weeks. Any questions?
So instead of sort of a split this way, they're gonna make 2 lots, but they're gonna be weird and bigger?
That's what it looks like.
So, but I have a question, because how much width is at the top of that property line where the roundabout circle is?
Right
How
here.
wide is it? That's gotta be the access to the property.
I don't know what it is exactly. It could
Like, yeah, for a
get
driveway,
you
is
that
that?
information.
Because it's gotta
Cul-de-sac.
be, it has to be a certain width at the street face to be a legal lot.
And as part of the subdivision process, that would be checked.
Okay, cause right now,
It's close to 30 feet.
Yeah. If you could read this curve table right up here, which I can't, well, maybe I can.
I don't know, I have old eyes, so. I'm
Looks
not
like
gonna be able to
approximately
check.
29 feet, if I'm reading that right.
see, I thought there was like, I thought it had to be a certain width at,
And like I said, this has been submitted as a subdivision, which is being reviewed right now. It's administrative review.
okay.
And so that would be part of that. If it's under that, then it wouldn't be a legal
Big
lot.
enough for a driveway.
Correct. Which
No, I don't think
technically has
that's the
nothing to
issue.
do with the utility easement vacation.
That is not the issue. It's frontage on the street,
That's true. I thought about that.
and there's no other street. So that's the issue to me, is there's not enough frontage on the second lot to make it be a legal lot.
But the issue is the abandonment of the
Correct.
easement.
Not the lot
I know,
itself.
Dedication of the lot.
I'm sorry.
You're the one that usually says that. You're the one that says, hey, we're not talking about that tonight. We're just talking about.
I know, Jeannie might not be on her game. That's why I'm thinking some of my milkshake was not
Madam Chair.
I took off my chair hat.
And if it helps, I'll go back to this slide, Dee.
I think
There we
it's,
go, that's much
We're
better.
talking about
See
vacating
what I'm
this,
talking about?
Yeah.
but it's not our issue as to whether or not the
That's got enough frontage.
subsequent subdivision is legal.
let's
That's not our issue.
move on.
But if you're moving the easement, it's gonna, I mean, I guess you have nothing in it, so it doesn't really matter right now what the line looks like.
Correct. And the reviews of that subdivision should be complete before the action item next time. So we
Okay.
know if that's
Isn't our role the abandonment of the easement,
Yeah.
and then your role is to create the new one?
Yeah.
correct?
Okay.
Any other
Would you
questions
just
for
ask the
Paul?
question for
We
me?
have a topographical
I
map.
will.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Any other questions for Paul on this one? Thank you.
Okay, Rich.
If we saw
All
the
right, our
topography,
final workshop item
might
is
make more
some
sense.
proposed budget adjustments
Yes,
under resolution
But were they
23-13. Mr. Anderson, would Would you like to lead us through these?
Yes, there's 2 grants and a gigantic adjustment. So 2,808 is a reimbursement from the feds for police officers' work on some of their cases. 411 is a 911 grant, additional funds, regardless of how small, we bring those to council. And last is just a really small adjustment to purchase power cost of $8,021,000. This is in addition to the previous adjustment, approximately 6.4 million, I believe it was, that we brought in November, December timeframe. So those are some big adjustments, but purchase power has been huge lately.
So these are anticipated surcharge revenue, not achieved.
Right, and in full disclosure, these are liberal to give us the ability to purchase power. We're not going to pay more because you said we could. We're just asking for the authority to buy power so that we can sell it. And this is a liberal estimation of what we'll need for this year to remain under budget at the end.
So it listed as a 5-year firm contract in the document. Is that?
That'll work.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Rich?
None.
Thank you, Rich. Are there any other considerations this evening?
There must be.
No, I'm trying not to set the record for the longest meeting. Thank goodness we don't have an RDA meeting now, right?
I think
All right.
I'm
Hearing no other considerations, bang, bang, we're done.